Welcome to Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup. I'm your host, Jason Bland, and we are back after a week off. We didn't have a show last week because my son Dean, it was his 7th birthday, and family comes first. It's what I want to do, is spend time with my son and not worry about, getting ready for a show and all that. But I did miss you guys. I did miss being on air. I'm glad to be back tonight. And I planned some really good guests this month because guess what? Next Sunday, there's no show either. It's my wife's birthday. So I made sure we had a good guest last week to leave us off. Terry Lovelace, Heather Wade. It was an amazing show. I've been riding high off of that ever since. But tonight is Carla Wills Brandon. We're going to talk about deathbed visions, near-death experience, afterlife communication. I think these are one of the most common things people have experienced in the paranormal is communication with a loved one who's passed on to the other side. I've had that experience. I've known so many people who've never had any other paranormal experience, but they've had that one. Because death, it touches us all. We all, some way, have experienced death and touched us in some way, or someone we know has moved on to the other side. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight, guys. And we will have phone lines. Actually, tonight, there's a little different change we'll get to soon to tell you about. But the phone lines will be open all night long. Just have to wait on hold until I call upon you. Then just wait. I'll call upon you, and you can ask a question. But what we do every Sunday is the World Wide Web of Weird, so we should get rolling into the show. Welcome to another night of Paranormal Soup. As I said before, I'm your host, Jason Bland. Tonight, things are going to be a little bit different. We usually play copyrighted music out to Late Night in the Midlands Radio Network. They're kind of in the change. They still have a music license, but they're in the change of getting a new one, and I kind of want to make sure I don't break any rules. So tonight is original music night. Music made by me, and I have some friends I could probably donate some music to. And if you are a fan of the show and a musician, and you are not signed to any label that would have any problems with it, but you want to see, maybe I might play your song on the show. I'm not saying I will. It's got to kind of fit the feel of the show. But email me or message me on Facebook. The email is paranormalsoup@gmail.com. You can email me there. Or if you're a Facebook friend, go ahead and send me a message on Facebook of a song you think I might be interested. Don't be offended if I don't. Please don't. It's got to fit the mood of the show, kind of. And that's why we will be back with the copyrighted music, hopefully in a few weeks. For people listening on the radio network, that's kind of my dirty pleasure or guilty pleasure, is to hear some good music, and I know the Facebook audience misses out. All right, well, let me bring up my lovely co-host tonight, Jamie D. How you doing?
Doing great. How are you?
Doing good. Glad to be back. Joining us from St. Augustine, Florida, is Rob Autry himself. How you doing tonight, Rob?
Pretty fantastic, actually.
And then, as well, always every Sunday night, we do the World Wide Web of Weird, and we got our video engineer, Jeffrey Chan, running the show for that. And speaking of that, let's go ahead and roll into the World Wide Web of Weird. Tonight on the World Wide Web of Weird, we're going to start off with, there's been a lot of stuff, with this whole solar observatory thing, which that story, again, to me, just seems a little bit fishy, the FBI thing, but there's a lot of stuff people are curious about UFOs and the sun, because that was the big conspiracy theory. Was there a UFO that in front of the sun or something? They had to shut down the solar observatory. Well, NASA and Skywatchers caught something huge near the sun. This is from October 2nd. It's from UFO sightings shotspot.blogspot.com. Again, for people listening on Late Night in the Midlands Radio Network, we are a webcast where you can see us on our Facebook page, Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup, where we share videos and pictures of the articles we're talking about. But I try to narrate the best I can for you listening. So if you want to keep listening, just like I said, no copyright music to enjoy your, the radio experience, I guess, but enjoy my original music tonight. But let's move on. So NASA's Skywatcher caught the same huge object near the sun. NASA satellite E-1284 captured on September 30th, 2018 at 1:06 a.m. a huge bright object that seemingly leaves the sun's surface. And this thing this thing would have to be huge. On the evening of September 29th, Skywatcher Stefano Ferragu, in Italy, like ragu, was witnessing the sunset phase and started to photograph the sun with a Nikon D800 camera. Only after viewing the images, Stefano noticed the presence of a bright unknown object near the sun. Stefano talks about a celestial body like the infamous Planet X, of course, Nibiru or Planet 9, but since the image from NASA as well as from the Skywatchers were taken within the same time frame, we may assume that they have captured the same object, UFO, near the sun. It would be huge. It would be just a UFO. It would be a planet UFO. I mean, it would be huge, Death Star size, how's it flying out of the sun? There's some people, and I had when I was really young, I had a story idea where I thought, in my story, it was all space sci-fi. The aliens used the sun as like a portal. And then later on in conspiracy circles and aliens, I hear that is one, that they believe the sun is some kind of used as a way to bend space-time and make a portal into our universe or something like that. And that's why we see these ships flying out of the strange stuff from the sun. I don't know, man. Imagine what it would take technology-wise just to survive getting that close to the sun or to have something that big. Because, the sun's pretty huge. And whatever that is bigger than the Earth, I would think. All right, let's move on. This comes from Unexplained Mysteries. I'm a Star Trek geek, so I had to pick this. There's a number of articles. This comes from the original articles from a Science Alert, but it's a lot longer, so I'm going with the one from unexplainedmysteries.com. Scientists create real-life Borg network. Oh, I'm sold on reading that, right? Known as the BrainNet, the remarkable achievement was made possible using a combination of electroencephalograms, or EEGs, we'll just call it that, right? Which record the electrical impulses from the brain activity. Electroencephalograms. Is that how you say it? I don't know. And transcranial magnetic stimulation, which stimulate neurons using magnetic fields. In recent experiments, two senders had their brains connected to the network and were asked to control a Tetris-style game by the way of staring at one of the two different flashing LEDs. A third connected individual, the receiver, was able to pick up on the control commands from the other two and use them to rotate the blocks in the game. Across 5 different groups of participants, and an accuracy level of over 80% was achieved. We present BrainNet, which, to our knowledge, is the first multi-person, non-invasive, direct brain-to-brain interface for collaborative problem solving. The researchers are right. That's collaborative problem solving. That's what the Borg were doing.
Non-invasive too.
Right. I should have had the assimilate, tagline to play a little audio. I'm a huge Star Trek fan, and the Borg I thought were, some of the best villains ever created in the Star Trek universe, because to me it is a real fear, because they were nanonite technology, like they would infect you with the little nanonites, would change your whole body structure to turn you into a Borg. But the idea is that they had this net, they were one, the Borg continuum, you will assimilate, and is this what they're working towards? With this brain net, and we'll have the internet, now we'll have brain net, and I think, they transmit thoughts and they can do this stuff in the brain. They'll be able to transmit visual stuff and put you in the matrix. I don't know. But the whole high brain net thing, I already see that without telepathy. I see that with just the manipulation on social media and the news through the internet. I see a bunch of zombies. So let's just give them more power to do that by just directly tapping into our brains and putting us in. Man, people are already rude enough. What do you think is going to happen when they're telepathic with each other? I mean, they already are keyboard warriors. Wait till they can't even hide their thoughts from each other. Oh, God. Some people will be getting triggered. All right, let's move on. All right, this is last. We didn't have a show last week. The week before, we had an awesome, amazing show with Terry Lovelace, amazing guest about his UFO experience, and we had Heather Wade on, which was awesome. I mean, incredibly awesome. Still riding high from that. And we talked about this UFO. Now, this is the newest picture. I have a video up that rolls. Let me pull up the article here. There's not much to the article. I'm still trying to find out more. HelensTaleWeebly.com. Mystery deepens. Eerie ring of lights appears again in over the skies of Minnesota. We showed this, the first one, which was like from September 19th. This new one's from September 30th in Bloomington. The other one, and doesn't have the name of the list of where the other one was, but this is video footage we're showing right now. I believe this one was taken the night of the one that was shot on the highway. And it was in a different area, and I don't have the name of the town. This newest one that you see over the house is in Bloomington. This one here, maybe this one was the one that was in Bloomington. I don't know. They don't tell me in this article, sadly. I've been talking to Terry Lovelace about this. We're enjoying the sharing UFO footage and stuff. Now, they have said they believe these are lights from a casino in Minneapolis. And I have a picture of that casino, and it would definitely seem like a logical explanation, but these lights are being seen all over. So there's Bloomington and there's Minneapolis. You think that could be, they could really see that from there like that? I mean, I don't know. But look at the video. The video does not look like lights appearing in the sky like that. It looks like a craft. The video looks like a craft. There's another video out. I shared it on my timeline for my Facebook friends, and I'm on my, you can go there and see me if you're not a friend. It's public for this. But I shared somebody else caught video of this, and I didn't get a chance to research it because it was right before the show. I saw it today. If it was on the same night as these pictures in this video, I don't know. Terry Lovelace pointed out something. He counted, I think it's this picture, he counted like 12 lights. There's only 10 lights on the casino. So that wouldn't match the casino. But Jeff, did you show the picture of the casino? Pull that up so people can see. There's the casino. I believe it's in Minneapolis, I believe. Oh, no, that's not it. He's trying to pull it up here. You had it up right before it. Here's a comparison. Here's a good comparison photos on the video here of the Bloomington Stillwater. That was the original one. It was Stillwater. And the other one was another town. Yeah, that's the casino looks like. And I mean, it looks like it'd be pretty bright up in the sky. Maybe. I think it's a plausible explanation, but like you said, I think it looks like there's only 10 lights on the casino. I don't know. More people are seeing it. You'd think they'd be used to those casino lights by now. I wouldn't think it's a UFO. Or maybe it's atmospheric conditions. I don't know, but what did I say, though, 2 weeks ago? I said, when we got just the one picture, I said, well, there's got to be video. If this thing was really there's going to be video. There's going to be more pictures. Other people had to have seen it. And, well, I was right. But not only that, it came back. It came back another night. Or is it just the casino lights just showing up on certain cloudy nights? I can see that as a possible explanation. But this video we're showing right now is the only video I have in there. And I said the other person's video, this does not look like lights in the sky from a casino. Where's the beams? That's what you pointed out, Jamie. Jamie pointed out on Facebook, like if you can see the lights up in the sky like that, you should see some of the beams coming up. And none of the pictures, none of the photos, do you ever see any beams coming from the ground, ever?
Because we're having a bottom view, not a top view.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. But man, that's some lights if that's a casino. But that doesn't look. You almost see a shape of a ship. Terry Lovelace thought this looks like a ship to him, and to me, this video was what made me really reconsider it being the casino lights. Was that video? Okay, well let's move on because we got a great guest tonight. I want to definitely get to. All right, so this next one, this is a ghost photo from the courier.co.uk. This is from September 26th. They caught a ghostly apparition. Hold on, my article's messing up here. Ghostly apparition caught on camera at Montague County Park. I probably butchered that. Ghostly apparition has apparently been spotted lingering in the woods of the outskirts of Dundee. Fiona Lang and her daughter Kiera Lang took a photograph of the mysterious figure spotted chanting and dancing at Montague Country Park. Ghost hunters Neil Patterson and Jill Henderson are now returning to the scene of the sighting next month to host the Great Angels Ghost Tour. Jill said the people who saw the figure thought it was something getting filmed for a music video or something, but there was nothing else around going on, and then they realized this was really something completely different. The mysterious figure was chanting and dancing, and the witnesses who took the photograph watched him for over 10 minutes. Well, pull out your phone and take a video. Don't you got phone with the video? I want to see him dance. A passerby joined them in the woods as they watched the figure, and just as they went to point him out, he vanished. But the strange thing was, in order to exit the park, he would have to walk past the witnesses, otherwise he'd have to cross the water in the dam which surrounded him. They all ran like the wind to the car park, terrified he was still around. I was godsmacked as it adds a completely different twist to the walk. Bespook ghost tours based out of Aberoth have made it their mission to uncover the strangest stories and ghostly goings around in the country. Husband and wife team Neil and Jill will be be presenting their findings at the Monarchy Country Park on a guided walk. The couple launched their, this is all about them now, but, they said he was like chanting and dancing in the woods. They took this picture. You don't think, why wouldn't it come to mind that, like, everybody's got video. Maybe they didn't have any space on their phone. I don't know. They had like one megabyte left of memory. I can get one picture. maybe they just, like you said, didn't think it was paranormal until he disappeared. I don't know. Some guy chanting, dancing in the woods. I'd probably pull out my phone, maybe get a video. I don't know. But you really don't see much in the picture. I mean, you just see like this black kind of smear fudge thing through the trees. Like, what is it? Oh, a video of a ghost dancing and chanting would have been interesting. Let's see. All right. Well, let's move on. Now, this one, I really love this one. There is profanity, but it's bleeped. Don't worry, Michael Vera or Katie. It is bleeped, but this video is hilarious. This is from Daily Star. I saw it on Facebook. I saw it from the original guy who posted. His name's Jay Brown. If I could contact him on Facebook, I would. I hope I have permission. It's all right that I show this, but I can't help it. This is really crazy video footage. A security guard thought he spotted a ghost. When he checked the CCTV, he was horrified. A security officer who thought he had spotted a ghost during his evening shift was left terrified when he checked the cameras. Jay Brown was working the overnight shift at a school last weekend when the bizarre event occurred. He told his friend's family how he saw a ghost walking through the halls of the deserted building, but no one believed him. So Jay from Chicago went back to work the next day to watch the CCTV footage in the hopes that it would prove his claims. The clip shows a strange white orb making its way across the screen. It also reveals Jay's reaction as he jumps out of his seat and points the camera. This is the best part. Okay, go ahead and play the video with the audio, Jeff. Not hearing it. Oh.
Look at I saw that. I saw that. See, I saw that. I'm like, it disappeared over there by the desk, and I'm like, okay. So I looked at the camera. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna calm down. So I wanted to tell the camera, y'all see that? Y'all saw that?
I love how you like keep Wayne's down, like you see that? And it's really good footage. I mean, it's something going across that carpet. It's like a mist. And we're going to talk tonight because I know some of the deathbed when people have been on their deathbeds and had died. The witnesses in the room have seen mist come out of people. So I know we'll talk about that tonight.
People
when they died, I've never actually seen anybody totally pass.
I saw one come out of my dad, come completely out and go up.
And we talk about this on the show about like these kind of mists and stuff like that. I've seen a mist like that on an investigation more than once, but I've never seen a person die. So we will talk about that tonight. That people witnessed this, but this was at he said it was a school, right? He was a security guard at a school. I think it's the best because you get his total. He sees it with his eyes. It's not just some manipulation of the camera. It's something real there because he stands up. You see him freak. And I love how he points to the camera and says, you see that? Oh, definitely. We're going to do a best of the World Wide Web of Weird for New Year's, and this is definitely going in there. All right.
His reaction looks pretty real.
It is real. I think this is totally legit. And I mean, it's some really good footage, and it totally runs across the screen like that. That's crazy. It's crazy. All right. Let's move on, though. Let's go on. All right, on a different front, dealing with ghosts. This comes from SmokingGun.com. I cannot talk. Damn. Louisiana man tells the cops that a ghost planted meth on him.
Drugs are bad. Okay.
Yeah. All right. After police found methamphetamines in plain view on a nightstand in his home, a Louisiana man claimed that a ghost placed the narcotics in his residence, according to a arrest report. Responded to reported stabbing, of course. At least it's not Florida, right? A sheriff's deputies earlier yesterday encountered Michael Attenberry, 59, at the door of the West Monroe residence. Attenberry seen at right. Oh, right. No, there he is on the screen. He's on the left. cursed at the cops and people who were obviously not there. Deputies quickly determined that Attenberry had not, as he claimed in 911 call, been stabbed. Oh, so there was no stabbing; it was all in his head by an axe. They were intruders inside his home. While making sure that Attenberry's residence was clear, a deputy spotted in plain view on a nightstand an open brown paper containing approximately 1 gram of suspected methamphetamines. I'm sure there was a lot more on that paper. It's gone now. A subsequent search of the Attenberry yielded a pill bottle containing another gram of meth. Attenberry surmised that a ghost or intruders, placed the meth on him and were exiting the home through a nearby window, which was not accurate, investigators noticed. Attenberry was arrested on a felony narcotics possession charge and misdemeanor criminal mischief count. He's being held in the parish jail in lieu of $5,000 bond. Yeah, and again,
Drugs are bad, okay?
yeah,
I'm honestly surprised it wasn't from Florida, but
right. But blame it on a ghost. Just blame it on the ghost. The ghost. What's a ghost can be doing with methamphetamine, my friend? That'd be pretty scary. That'd make a good horror movie. The Ghost on Methamphetamine. Meth head ghost. I don't know. Okay, let's one more. This one is something I am very passionate about and scares me about where we're going in society. And I'm a huge sci-fi fan, and I have Netflix, and I've watched all of Black Mirror. And this article covers the comparisons to an episode of Black Mirror called Nosedive. If you've seen it, you should, along with 15 million credits. That's another really good. That's my other favorite Black Mirror. But this is definitely one of my favorites. But what they compare it to is what's going on in China. This is from awarenessact.com. While the episode of Black Mirror were meant as warnings, it seems they are becoming reality. The Chinese government is about to launch a social credit system, and it reminds us a lot of one specific episode. Chinese officials say that the system will be in effect sometime in 2020, as they're well on track. This would be a system that tracks and ranks people based on the number of things and scores them accordingly. As you may know, China already has millions of high-tech cameras everywhere, which makes this kind of a thing much easier for them than you might think. According to the New York Post, a pilot program for this has already been seen, and depending on the citizen scores, they could reap benefits or face consequences. Those who are at the bottom could be locked out of society and banned from travel. Literally, this comes as China works to become higher in regards to AI and so forth. Basically, under the system, if you are a top citizen, you're rewarded bonus points and other things of the sort. The social credit system sounds dangerously like an episode titled Nosedive. What do you think about all this is what the article asks. I want to know what people think about this. If you've seen this episode, this is what scares me, is that this is acceptable around the world. They have like a test system. They're already kind of doing this in China. I know of a story of a famous Chinese actress who was part of the test, and she had like a 0 credit score because they didn't like her ties to America and her Westernism, and she had a really low score. And you know what? She disappeared. She disappeared, just like recently the chief of Interpol that's from China disappeared. That's what happened. Oh, your score's so low. Oh no, you disappear. We just get rid of you. Why are we? We're all worried about Russian collusion and stuff. I'm not getting political, but we're all worried about what Russia's doing. I'm not worried about what Russia's doing. It's all the stuff going on in China that scares me. And Apple, their ties to China now. I have all this Apple stuff, but all their iCloud, that's all based in China now. All the servers, everything. And China has no problem stealing and hacking and looking at your information. Trust me, they don't. I'm sure our government doesn't either, but I really don't trust what's going on with China, and that's what scares me coming up in the world. So take that as food for thought. That's it for the World Wide Web of Weird. Like I said, not trying to get political or anything. Just I love like Black Mirror, but those episodes scare me. They scare me. 50 million credits was a very depressing episode. See that one too. All right, guys, our guest tonight is Carla Wills Brandon. Like I said, no music for the copyrighted music, so we got my original music we're playing tonight. But when we come back, we'll have Carla Wills Brandon. We're going to talk about deathbed visions, near-death experiences, afterlife communications. Like I said, I think this is the most common paranormal experience so many people have had. A lot of people go their life, they don't see a ghost, they don't see a UFO, or I've never seen Bigfoot, but the most common paranormal experience I find between people is loss of a loved one and then coming back and communicating with them. I've heard so many stories of that, and to me, they're the most powerful. It's those are some of the most inspirational and powerful about there is an afterlife, there is another side, and that's why our loved ones come back to let us know. All right, guys, we'll be back after this. I really am not talking good tonight. After this commercial break. All right, see you in a few minutes. Tonight on Paranormal Soup, our guest is Carla Wills Brandon. Carla always wanted to do two things professionally: be of service to others and write. After receiving a scholarship to California State University in Fresno, she graduated with high honors and a degree in psychology. She went on to finish her master's degree in clinical psychology from the California School of Professional Psychology in Fresno, an APA-approved school. Her husband, Michael Tex Brandon, also received his PhD in clinical psychology from this institution. After publishing 8 books and developing a successful private practice as a state-licensed marriage and family therapist, Carla decided to go back to school. Not interested in treading a traditional education path, she completed a 2-year course of study and dissertation and a Doctor of Philosophy in Holistic Nutrition programs at the Clayton College of Holistic Health. Her dissertation was titled A Four-Pronged Approach to the Holistic Treatment of Food Disorders. Carla has published 12 books, which one was a Publisher's Weekly bestseller. Her most recent book, Beyond the Chase, Breaking Your Obsessions That Sabotage True Intimacy, is proving to be a great success. She's also lectured across the U.S. and the U.K. and has appeared on numerous national radio television programs such as Coast to Coast Radio with George Norrie, Geraldo Rivera, Sally Jesse Raphael, Montel Williams, Art Bell, Coast to Coast Radio Show. She was on with Heather Wade. Remember, it was a memorable show there. And Uri Geller's Coast to Coast Radio Show, and Politically Incorrect with Bill Maher. Considered a relationship and trauma expert, many of her media appearances have been dedicated to discussing healthy intimacy, recovery from sexual abuse, and trauma resolution. She's also appeared on several programs with her husband Michael, has 2 children. Often see couples in their private practices as a couple. Aside from her work with relationships, intimacy issues, and sexual dysfunction, addiction, trauma resolution, and grief, Carla has been investigating spirituality and other related phenomena for over a decade. Her major radio show appearances have dedicated to topics such as near-death experiences, after-death communications, deathbed visions, and premonitions. And that's what we're going to get into tonight. We're going to talk about those experiences that I believe so many people who might have never experienced the paranormal before have had this experience. Might be only thing they ever experienced is a loved one coming to them after they die, or watching a loved one die and seeing something miraculous happen on their death. These are some of the most common paranormal experiences I hear from people when I tell them what I do. So this is going to be a great topic, and we will have the phone lines are open now. I'll give out the numbers maybe after the next commercial break or a little bit. Well, you can call in and stay on hold. The phone lines are 219-230-4444 or Skype ID OOJBland00. But you might be on hold for a while because we got a really good guest, so let's get to it. You there with us, Carla?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
I hear you.
Oh, goody, because this thing, it has a mind of its own. All my computers, all my tech stuff, they all rebel every time right before I'm going to appear on a radio show. It's a mad dash to get everything in line and organized, and then something poops out, and so I'm really glad that this is okay.
Well, people ask me, like, how long do you prep for your show? I'm like 2-3 hours. Just to make sure everything's working right, everything's updated.
Yeah.
So you're not alone.
You're right, exactly.
Yeah, okay, good. I don't feel so unique then. That's good.
No, Murphy's Law definitely applies to live radio. Well, thank you. Welcome, Carla, to the show tonight. It's a true honor to have you on. I'm excited to talk about these topics.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It should be informed.
Oh, now you were cutting out, so now we jinxed ourselves.
Okay. Darn it. Okay, let me see what I can. How's that?
That's better. Yeah, it was like the audio was cutting out. We don't want to lose you tonight. So I gave you a little bit, of an introduction of you, but I would let you to tell the audience a little bit more about yourself and how you got involved in learning about, deathbed visions and these experiences people have after people have passed on and afterlife communications.
Well, it's funny how one adventure leads into why can be.
You're cutting in, Carla. You're cutting in and out on us. Darn it! I think we're losing internet on her.
Okay,
it says poor connection.
With me?
Yeah, I get a little warning that says that. The only other option I have is if you want to, I can give you a call.
Give me a call and I'll do it on my.
Okay, send me your number in Facebook Messenger.
Okay, sorry about that.
Nope, it happens. It happens.
Okay.
She sounded great at the test. We have a guest do a sound check. She comes on, sounded fine.
Yeah, I think we jinxed it.
I was going to knock on wood, too, and I didn't.
I didn't either. I really should have.
Hey, like I said, she's not alone. It happens like all the time. So.
We had internet issues all this morning, right, Rob?
Oh boy. Yeah, I set up a whole new router and everything.
It's China. They heard me.
China. That's it. They're listening.
Oh, she sent me on Skype. Okay, hold on. Hold on a second. It's not letting me do anything with the number. Oh, really? Skype? On Facebook. Won't let me copy it. It won't let me call it or do anything. Hopefully, we'll get our guest back on here in a second. Sadly, didn't leave a pen and paper to try to write this down. Won't let me, let me give her my number. Hold on. Skype, you are the bane of my send it. All right, hold on. Come on now. Trying to walk and chew gum. That's what we'd call it. I'm trying to type and run a radio show. Let me see if she sent it to me. It won't let me there we go. We got it. All right, here we go. You there, Carla?
Is this better? Yeah. Is this any better?
It's better because I don't think you're cutting out.
Oh, yay!
All right.
Okay.
There we go. All right. So back to where we were. Tell the audience how you got involved with this, because most of it was cut out when you started talking before. That's why we had to change up. So again,
darn.
How did this evolve for you and to going from being a therapist to getting involved in this realm of the paranormal and the spiritual realm?
Well, I grew up with very interesting parents, especially on my mother's side. My grandfather in the 1940s was able to be a part of the UFO sightings that were going on during that time. And so
Ooh, wow.
He would sit in the back. Yeah. And so what he would do is he would sit in the backyard every night with his wine, and he would sit and wait for another sighting.
I like him already.
Oh yeah, he was a character. So I'd sit out there with him, and this interest was passed on to my mom, and she became very interested in the paranormal. She passed when I was very young, at the age of, I just turned 16, and before that, right before that, she had some departing visions of her own. But I was so young back then, I didn't know what was going on. I went to a Sly and the Family Stone concert, and I had what was called an empathetic departing vision. I was at the concert. My mom was in the hospital. Well, she was still at home.
Yeah.
But suddenly I felt very sick. I mean, I felt really, really sick. And so I saw an ambulance on the grounds, and I walked over there and asked if I could crawl in. He said, fine. So when I woke up, the concert was over, and we went home, and I found out that at the exact time I was getting into the ambulance, my mother was being loaded onto an ambulance from our house. Yes, and so I was feeling her illness, and I was feeling her fading out. And so I didn't know what to make of any of that.
Say that term again. I'm not going to try. Go ahead and say that term again and what you called that.
Oh, that's an empathetic departing vision. That's where we can feel and sense what our departing loved one is going through as physical death approaches. So a lot of people can get very emotional.
Yeah.
So somebody close to me, if they're passing, I will just suddenly get very emotional, and I won't recognize until after the fact that, oh, this is related to so-and-so who just left us. The other departing vision I had with her was when she passed, the moment she crossed over. I was awoken at about 5 in the morning, and I knew she had moved on. I just knew it intuitively, and I felt very comfortable and comforted. And so what I did is I just waited, because I knew somebody was going to call me sooner or later and tell me about it. And not only was I awakened, but 2 dear family friends, a great aunt of mine, and a cousin, we all awoke at the same time and in different locations, and we knew she had passed on. Sad thing is, because we have such a death-phobic society, none of us really talked about it with each other for decades. Yeah. And so for me, I just tucked all that stuff away and didn't really think about it, but I was interested in auras, and I was interested in premonitions, and I was interested in mediumship, and I didn't know where all this came from. But being in the mental health field, the first thing that is said is, oh my gosh, you're not going to talk about that stuff, are you?
Oh yeah, it's big faux pas.
You'll look like a wacko. And so I thought, oh my gosh, in my field where we're supposed to be warm, fuzzy, touchy, tell me what's going on people, I can't even talk about this with my peers. So I don't think I even told my husband about it for a long, long time. He had a near-death experience. He has vertigo really bad, and he was taking a shower, and between the hot shower and the vertigo, he passed out and hit his head right on the tile. Yeah. And so he went to a place, it was a happy place, where he saw his mother and his father, and he described it as very colorful. But he knew he couldn't talk about that either, because he's a child psychologist. So we wouldn't have a business if we had talked about that back then. So what I did is I kind of evolved into a trauma specialist. So when the Challenger blew up, Michael and I worked for Flight Medicine.
Oh, wow.
And that was really something.
Oh, that's one of those things, you always remember where you were. I was in kindergarten, but I remember it. I remember my teacher coming in.
Do?
Oh yeah, I remember my teacher coming in tears, and it affected me because the one thing I wanted to be when I was a little kid was an astronaut. I even had like a little space shuttle model toy,
Yeah.
Yeah, so like that, you want to talk about learning about death, that was one of my earliest ways. I learned a lot about death in kindergarten, I'll tell you what.
Well, and usually at that age, we don't have a consciousness of death until we're about 7. And so when kids are thrown into that, their parents need to be there so that the kids can talk about it,
right,
so that they don't develop a death phobia. And so if one grows up in a family where that's the devil's doing, or that's your imagination, or they're with God now, so you don't know what you're talking about, if it's neglected like that, then they have kids who end up in my office because suddenly the young child is scared to death of death. And and it can get so bad that they are afraid their breath's going to stop, or they're afraid that, they don't want the light turned out, and it can just become a real issue. And so in working with trauma, I began to notice that people were reporting to me events similar to this, about either seeing a crisis apparition, which is an old term used for, or ghosts, as an old term. Those are old terms used for a spirit manifesting like in front of somebody.
A banshee.
Oh, yeah. But it's really just a person who's walked from this vibration to the next. That's it.
Yeah.
And
I was thinking about the forewarning of death, though. Like you got your premonition of death. Well, back in Irish legend, the banshee would come and warn people.
That's true. It's similar.
Yeah.
That's true. When the World Trade Center happened on 9/11, shortly after that, an airline crashed into a town in New Jersey. And I had what was called a premonition in dream form, where I suddenly in this dream saw an airplane crash into a large building. I saw people running, I saw flames, and then I saw souls leaving the earth. And I saw these souls coming back and kissing their loved ones and comforting them. Well, when I wrote my first book on deathbed visions, departing visions, I came in contact with a guy who had the exact same dream.
Oh, wow.
Premonition. So there were a lot of people when Columbia, there were disasters with Columbia and other space adventures or airplane situations where there have been numerous people who have had
the Challenger. One of the
Challenger also,
the astronaut, his daughter. Oh, I can't remember which.
That was Columbia.
Oh, that was Columbia. You're right. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
That was Columbia, but that happened with Columbia. That's right. I'm sorry. I think it was Challenger. It was Columbia. Yeah. You're right.
Yeah, the daughter had, when he went off, her father went off. They were Israeli. They were Jewish, and he was the first Israeli American to go up into space. And the daughter looked at him and said, "Goodbye, Dad," and then said something to the effect of, "I won't be seeing you again."
Oh, man.
And it was pretty powerful. And so thankfully, the rabbi, that family rabbi, they lived just up the street from us across the causeway. And so that rabbi there was a very nurturing individual who was able to walk the rest of the family through that.
Oh my
so
God.
They could see that as, see your father, he's not gone forever, and he's going to be there for you. And so if it's handled well, in a lot of situations it just isn't handled well. So some of the situations with some of the people I still work with, they have addiction problems, or they have phobia problems, or they have I'm never good enough issues, and all sorts of sad things. But in my practice, I really started to see a lot of that because I was working with so much trauma. And so what I did is I started collecting the accounts, and then I put out a message out, and I wrote letters and posted in news bulletins about, have you ever had an experience where a loved one has come to you after passing or just before passing, either in a dream or did you see something? Here's my address, let me know. So this was back when. and I got an onslaught.
Oh, I bet.
An onslaught of information from around the world, from South Africa to Japan to the Eastern European countries to all across the United States. I mean, just from everywhere. And the thing that I saw that was so amazing is how consistent these accounts were. You know, it wasn't like a hallucination. I always have to say this every time I talk on radio or give a presentation. I am a licensed mental health professional, so I can say this. If a person is having a hallucination, there's this guy that came into my office once, and he was hyper-manic. I thought he was going to jump out of the skin right there. And oh, yeah, he was bouncing off the walls. And he was talking to something over here and something over there, and it was very, very disorganized. The hallucination was very disorganized.
Yeah.
And so in those situations, what I do is I just climb on into the disillusion, and that's how I work with people like that.
You work with a hallucination? Do you kind of...
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah. I just work with it. I'm not going to fight it, and then make sure they get medical help, too.
It's so sad.
Yeah.
Somebody can't control what they're seeing and hearing, and having that. It's so sad that for somebody to go through that.
It's awful. It's terrible. And it's painful, to watch folks who endure that.
Yeah, definitely.
And the majority of them, if they can't, for instance, bipolar disorder, if somebody is very manic, they become addicted to the manic phase of the disease. And so it's like a crack high.
Yeah, because they don't like that. They're bouncing off the walls.
You bet. And so they don't want to take medication because it levels them out. So that's the biggest difficulty that we tend to have. But once they get proper treatment, they typically do well. They do well. So that's a whole different ball game. But these departing visions, also the medication is different from person to person.
True.
But these people who have departing visions, they're consistent. It's always with somebody who has preceded them in physical death, always. So I had an experience with my mother in dream form where I walked to the top of a mountain. The flowers were covering the mountain. The colors were indescribable. And then I saw a form climbing up the other side of the mountain and joined me on a bench at the very top. And it was my mother, and she just came to have a chat. And it was very comforting, and I felt okay about where she was, and she told me she was always there for me, and so that's another type of afterlife contact. So I just had a lot of these. I had a lot of these personally and then professionally. I would get accounts from people who had a departing vision along with their entire family, where a parent or a grandparent would be in the process of passing, and they might not even be bedridden, might just be laying on the couch or sitting in a chair, and suddenly they start talking about their relative who's gone before them standing in the hallway. And then they start asking why this husband or deceased son or grandparent is standing in the hallway, and the whole family would look in the hallway to see what he or she was talking about. And then as it progressed and as it looked like, yes, death was coming, there would be more conversation with this person that other people couldn't see in the room. Now, in other cases, people have seen the same thing in the room, where they have seen a spirit person, or they have seen a light, or a smell comes up, the smell of roses. I got that here in my... Well, in this house, it's over 100 years old, and when we first moved into it, I got a strong sense of roses. And we didn't have roses. We didn't have rose plants. I didn't have roses in the house. No rose potpourri perfume. And so I tucked it behind my ear, and 5 or 6 years later, a man knocked on my front door. He was the son-in-law of the daughter who grew up in this house, and he was like 90-something.
Oh, wow.
I mean, he was cute as could be, and ended up having his entire family come visit our house, and then we recognized that we knew this one and they knew us, and so it was like a grand reunion for us. But after he showed us, who had lived in what room, I asked him, did I get the strong smell of roses around here sometime? Did she keep roses? Did she have dried roses? And he said, yes, she had them everywhere. So we can have all kinds of sensory experiences before a person passes or after a person passes. They just want to come and check on us, or they want to come and comfort us. When somebody is in the process of passing, the last thing we need to do is to not talk about their passing. They may want to talk about their passing. It's really okay to just ask, do you see anything in this room besides me? Is there anybody else here? And if they say no, what are you talking about? You're crazy. Then, well, you're not supposed to talk anymore about this with that person. But more times than often, what they'll say is, well, there's this man who keeps showing up. He keeps showing up. Or they'll see even their pets. I see my pets. One man was seeing all of his pets on a hill. And he was very excited about this. Of course, I got in trouble for that, too, because then in this field, I was told that if I talk about afterlife events with pets, I would be discredited.
Why?
So I know. Everybody has an opinion. But that was very comforting for him, and it's been very comforting for other people. So getting into this was very slow for me. So what I did is I started just researching departing visions, and I got into communication with one person who had done research in the 40s, 50s, and 60s on departing visions with the medical community in India and in the United States. Then there was the book on death and dying by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and I read it, searching for departing visions, and didn't find anything. And then, right before she passed, I talked to somebody who had been with her while she was going through this process. And they told me that she had a whole chapter on departing visions, that she would sit with dying children, and that she's going to put this in the book. But sadly, her publishers told her, don't put this in the book, it won't sell. The book won't sell.
Geez.
Yes. So what I did is I dug around and I found some of the accounts that were going to be in this chapter. But back when I started this, there were very few people looking into departing visions. So I just became more and more interested, and I started to see that, wow, a lot of my experiences, they parallel these. But when your children start having departing visions, that changes everything. So my youngest son had a departing vision, and it was very powerful for him. He saw an angel who had come to take care of his grandfather. His grandfather was passing. And he would look at me as if I was dumb as dirt when I couldn't see this angel. Because I would ask if he was about 3.
3?
Yeah, he was 3 years old. So he'd be sitting in the back seat of the car in his child protective everything. And we'd be going over the causeway up into the city. And he would say that he wanted me to go in the back seat with him, and that this angel could drive the car. And I would look and I would say, well, honey, no, I don't see this angel. No, I'm going to drive the car. And he'd get really mad at me. And he would just pitch a fit. And then when I would ask about this, he would say, that's when he would really look at me like, what is wrong with you? It's right here. Here's this. He's got red hair right here, sitting right here.
He's got red hair.
And so that's what he said. That's what he said. And so often the angel was with him. And one time at the office, I took my kids. I had the luxury of taking both my sons to the office with me. We had an office in a 100-year-old house, and so we could bring a nanny, and she could watch them while I saw clients. And so one day, Michael had come with Josh. Michael's my husband. And Josh, they found a dead possum outside. And so Josh goes, this angel, who was called Damus, by the way, which is Damus, D-A-M-U-S, which is a word for the angel of death, which is actually an escort to the afterlife. It's not a bad thing, but
some people might feel differently about that. Having their 3-year-old say a name that means the angel of death, basically. I might have a little different feeling, Carla. Yeah. I'm just honest.
Well, you know, I had the luxury of being a little ahead of the game, so. But yeah, I know a lot of people have a hard time with the angel of death. It's like the guy with the big thing, dressed all in black, coming to get you.
Yeah, that's what I'm picturing.
That's what people picture. But this was just some big kid with red hair.
Wow.
Yeah, and so, but he saw the possum, the dead possum, and he said, "Oh, that possum went to the sky." And Michael said, "What?" "Well, you know, Da's going to go to the sky too. Damus is going to take Da to the sky." Okay. Well, it was a good thing that Michael and I had talked about this, because being a child psychologist, he hears a lot of stuff.
Right.
And I've heard a lot of things too. But understanding departing visions really helped us with this. And so we began asking Josh when Damus was around. And a lot of times he would say, "No, he's not here right now." And then I'd ask and he'd say, "Yeah, he's sitting right here." And so when my father-in-law passed, I asked Josh, "Well, where's Damus?" "Oh, he went away. He went with Da." And we never heard about Damus again. So, you know, I mean, kids, the veil is thin for kids.
Right.
A lot of kids who come into the office and they've had near-death experiences or some afterlife contact, they have problems with what their parents have told them when they've tried to talk about these things. Like, I opened the door and Grandma was standing there. And the mother goes to the door and grandmother's not there. And then the child goes, "Yes, Grandma's right here. She's standing right here." And then maybe a couple hours later, there's a telephone call from the hospital or where Grandma lives, and the daughter's informed that her mother has passed. So children, they have a natural instinct for this sort of stuff. But for me, outside of my grandfather and digging all my mom's interesting books out from under her bed, I didn't have any permission to talk about this. And then when I became a professional, once again, I was told not to talk about it. And so it wasn't until I really started researching myself, and I happened to be in London, and it was a time when the IRA was still like waning out, but it was still causing problems in the tube system in London. And so one time we were all kicked off the tube because there was some threat. And so I went walking around the streets and found a really old bookstore, kind of like a Harry Potter sort of bookstore.
That's exactly what I was picturing when you said that.
You did?
Yeah.
Well, they had a lot. I miss those. I really do. But I went downstairs and I was just looking around, and then this book caught my eye, and it was Deathbed Visions. And it was by a physicist. It had been written by a physicist.
Oh,
and
sold.
He had been such a skeptic, but his wife was a surgical gynecologist. And this was back in the early 1900s. Oh. And, yeah, and so with her patients, you know, back then a lot of women died in childbirth. Right. And so some of these women would see their deceased fathers or their sisters or somebody coming for them as they were preparing to pass. And in one situation, one patient saw her sister, even though she didn't know her sister had already passed. Oh, so wow. When I read that, I went, I am not a nut job. Well, I'm a nut job, but I'm not, there's something to this. There's really something to this. And so then I compared a lot of these accounts with modern day accounts, and I started to see so many similarities. So with the first book that I wrote, I was cautious about talking about myself too much. I shared a little bit because also during that time, when I was younger, I had some sensitive experiences. Some people call it mediumship. I like the word sensitive. There are different types of sensitivities. There's the feeling sensitivity, there's clairvoyance, there's auditory, taste, smell. And so I began to notice these experiences. Not everybody else was having them. That's what I began to notice. And so I felt really unsure about putting my book because the previous books had been about self-help. And I was still on the road, and I was lecturing about numerous types of difficulties and relationship problems and addictions and trauma. And so I thought, if I've got a room full of trauma survivors and I start talking about this stuff, they're all going to walk out because they're having a hard enough time as it is. And so for the first book, I didn't really talk about it much. The second book, I talked about a little bit. And in the third book, I became very open about it. But it has been a progression, I'll tell you that.
You had to take a little at a time yourself, your own steps to be open to talking about it. You know, like you said, we're a death-phobic society. I love that term because it's so true. I mean, it looks like your parents, you know, and society in itself is so, well, no, you can't talk about that. But to me, what amazes me is like in your profession, you know, it's about the discovery of the mind. It's about helping the human mind, but it's what's more wondrous than these experiences that people are having. Even if they believe it's hallucinations, that's pretty wondrous in itself. You think more people would be more inquisitive about it.
Well, this one researcher who did the research in India and America, United States, he actually used the term hallucinations. He didn't use departing visions, deathbed visions, or anything that had to do with that, because medical people were much more receptive to conversation if it was called a hallucination. And so he had a large response, actually, of different accounts of the different types of experiences people were having and how consistent they were from person to person, regardless of religion, race, age, gender, atheist or not, process of dying, medication, because there are a lot of people out there who still think it's a brain issue, that it's a brain stem issue, or it's a this brain issue, or it's a this drug issue. Well, the truth of the matter is, the person who's taking a potent drug for pain can have the exact same, except for with different content, different relatives, a little bit different, than the person who's not on medication. But they still, I'll say it, they still persist in putting that stuff out there. And I think that they are making so much money in this business. Skepticism is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. Yeah. A little bit is good. We don't have to believe at face value everything. We can go do our own research. But when somebody is so black and white and adamant, and then they can make a lot of money at it, I mean, it's like some of these folks have been saying the same thing for the last 50 years. And so these are the people who unfortunately get on television. These are the people who become the voice of the Death and Dying Conference. I was on a show with Bill Maher years ago, and I was supposed to be on The Amazing Randy. I don't know if you know who he is.
Oh, dear, yeah. Well, I saw you had done Uri Geller show. You bring up.
Yeah. But The Amazing Randy, he was like such a skeptic.
Oh, yeah.
He was like skeptical, inquirer. Oh, just obnoxious, yes. And after the fact, he didn't show. Instead, another skeptic showed up who didn't believe in life after death, but at least he was a nice guy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But some of these people were just like obnoxious and rude. And so when there's that presentation and you have a bunch of people who are afraid of death and afraid of dying and they haven't dealt with grief, you know, that don't even know that it's okay to grieve for as long as you need to grieve, well, then a person is stuck. They're stuck because you have religion, which can be very, very constricting in its views. And so you have a lot of ex-Catholics and ex-Methodists and Protestants and people who have left their religion because they didn't like the dogma, but then they don't know how to look at all this other stuff. They don't know how to have a foundation for the continuation of life.
A foundation, that's what it is. It's some kind of back root of some kind of belief of the afterlife.
Yeah. So my boys, they both are much older now, and they think I'm woo-woo weirdo. Aww. And so they like to do me that all the time. No, yours will do it too, trust me.
I hope not. I really hope not. But I think my son already does. I think my 7-year-old already does. But then again, he believes in a lot of stuff too. So he's had some experiences already.
Okay. Oh, he has. Okay, yeah. So that's good. So you can discuss those with him, and so he has less a chance for having, like Josh. Josh does not have a fear of death. He really doesn't. And he has some sensitivities too. And so that can be discussed when parents are there and they can hear this stuff from their kids. But that's not the majority. See, you're the minority in this.
Oh yeah, we are the odd family. I would definitely think so.
That's good. Well, that's good because there are a few others of us out here. So.
Yeah. No, I've always felt I was going to be open and honest with my kids about death and spirits. I mean, my son tells people my dad and mommy are ghost hunters, which I hate that term, but
okay.
But he and we talk about ghosts.
Oh, that's him just going, yeah. He's being a kid when he says that. Yeah,
but we talk about ghosts and stuff, and I'm like, I've convinced him that we're not, Ghostbusters, and. Yeah, it's not like that, but he's had some experiences we've had to talk about, and, like, is it your imagination, or did you really see it? I'll believe you, and
right.
Let's talk about it.
And,
I'm open to it because, and I had a mom that was pretty open to, we had some experiences when I was a kid that she believed, so, because she experienced it too. So I had a mom that was pretty open to it. So I guess that's why I'm the way I am. Thank you, Mom.
Yeah.
So that's just what I believe. You got to be open and talk about that.
What experiences did your mom have?
Oh, I can think of one that definitely convinced her. If you want to, we'll tell a little Jason Bland ghost story. When I was young, she bought a mobile home from a former patient of hers who had passed away. She was a respiratory therapist, and in this home, she went up for sale. She realized after having him as a patient, and she needed a place, so she bought it, and. She would at night feel like the weight of somebody getting in bed with her. And she'd turn around thinking maybe it's, it's only me and her. She'd think it's me getting in bed with her, which I would sometimes do. And I think I was only 5 or 6. My mom might be in the chat room. She can clarify. I don't know. I was young, and or I might have been younger than that. I don't know. But nobody would be there. It would be nobody there. So she'd get freaked out about that. Well, then it kind of stopped. If I remember how she told the story right, it kind of stopped. And I remember this. I remember being in my bedroom and seeing, I didn't want my bedroom door open, and I'd see this shadow of a man. I'd see a man blocking the light of the hallway into my room, standing in my doorway. And then he'd crawl in bed with me. I'd feel I'd see him come towards the bed and crawl out and put the blankets over my head. And as soon as I felt the weight get on the bed, I just boom out of my room. And I remember running to my mom's room saying, "There's a man in my bed." And my mom, that sent chills down her spine because it had stopped for her, and then it started for me. And so the next day she's like, "Go outside and play," And then she's like, she said his name. She said, "This isn't your place anymore. You have to leave."
Okay. That's
one of the experiences we had. And the other one I've told on the show real quickly is my mom had a miscarriage. And at I think it was a pretty late term miscarriage.
Wow.
And when I was a little kid, we lived in this apartment complex, and I remember playing with a little boy and this little girl To me, she was physical and real and all that. My mom, I remember being in our apartment and playing with the little girl, not the little boy. And my mom would ask me, who are you playing with? I'm like, the little girl. She went to a psychic who later on said, the little girl. My mom didn't tell this woman anything about herself. She just suddenly says to my mom, that little girl your son's talking to, that's your unborn daughter.
Oh, wow.
And that freaked her out. And I remember later on, she told me, I'm like, I remember playing, there was a boy and a little girl, though, that lived there, right? She goes, there was a boy. There was never a little girl that lived there. And I remember her. So we, that's just some of the weirdness, of my childhood and my mom experienced. We experienced together, So I mean, she's always been open. That's why I have, I guess that's the weirdness I am. Again, thank you, Mom.
Yeah, you have to thank her for that because she talked to you about it and she shared with you about that. And even though it felt freaky at first, it was kind of like, as time went on, it was like, oh, was that man somebody who lived in our house at that time, or was he visiting there and he thought he could still stick around, didn't know he had to go and wasn't behaving? And because I think a lot of people talk about hauntings, and I think that's what a haunting is. Basically, it's a spirit who just keeps showing up, and they think they're supposed to still be there. And usually spirits will pop in and out, like in my house, this old house.
I've experienced that too in this house.
Yeah.
I don't feel like my house is haunted, but I have had the previous owner show up a couple times, just when he I guess felt he needed to.
Okay. He's also checking to see on what you're doing with the house.
Yeah, which isn't a lot. Like everything's falling apart. Won't get into that.
Yeah. They do stuff like that. I mean, I could always sense and feel the previous owner of the little cottage we have in North Carolina. And I finally just had to give him a really hard time and say, you can stay, but you have to behave. I just can't do this anymore.
He told me what plumbers to get in a dream. He does stuff like he showed up in a dream I had, and he showed me what plumbers I should use.
Really?
Yeah, because I was having these problems, and he showed me a dream, and he took me downstairs and showed me these plumbers working on the drainage, and I didn't end up calling those plumbers. My sister-in-law did, but it ended up being the same plumbers that worked on this house for him. They're like, "Oh yeah, this was Bob's house," and
that is incredible.
And then when I saw them, they were the guys in my dream. And he was trying to show me that you got to get this stuff rooted out of your drainage, and that's why it's plugging up. He was showing me that in a dream. So that's that kind of stuff he shows up. But it's like, oh, great, I got another older person to criticize me about not getting stuff done around the house.
Yeah. But I think that's great. So you have somebody, I believe we all have what are called spirit teams. And these are groups of spirits who are with us, who take care of us. They all have different ability, and they make a contract that this is what they want to do, that they want to be, some people call them guides. I just prefer spirit team. And what they do is they are always there for us for our lifetime, and they come forward when there's a need. So, this is what this guy does. He comes forward, and he knows the house really well, and he knows where you should go, and so he comes and gives you on target information.
I still was too lazy to call the plumbers. Awesome. My sister-in-law did it, but I wonder if he came to her and she just didn't remember it. She called the same plumber guys. It could have been 4 or 5 different plumbers in town she could have called, but that's
a riot. See, that's a riot. So you tell the guy thank you,
Yeah.
You just tell him thank you.
The other time he got me is when I first moved in and I got really drunk. Early 20s, people don't judge. And I got really drunk and was passed out on my couch. And I hear my dog growling, and I look up, and of course I was drunk, so take it as a grain of salt. But that's the first time I ever saw him, and he kind of stood there and looked at me for a minute while I was on the couch. I'm like, what? And I got really frightened and jumped up, and he was gone. And I think it was him telling me you ain't gonna be throwing parties in my house. That's the feeling I got. It was very judgmental.
Oh, maybe he would. We take ourselves to the afterlife. We absolutely do. So if we take our personality and we work on things in this life, I like to call them defects of character or ideas that have run amok. I mean, we come here to enjoy this life and to communicate and connect with others in this life. But on the other side, our loved ones, my grandfather, the one I was telling you about, there are a group of us who are sensitives, and we get together, and a lot of us have the same mentor, and so my grandfather comes through all the time, and he can still be a crabby old man with everybody. He comes through and he acts crabby, and I tell them that's just how he is, and
That's how you know
then I
it's
tell
him.
him to quit.
But that's how you know
well,
it's
that's how I
him.
know. Well, that's one of the ways, yeah. But I mean, so he's crabby. And then I've done readings before where there's been a lot of strife in a family, and so the one who's passed over wants to make amends or wants to, is remorseful, and the one on this side is still holding resentment. They're just not there yet. So there can be change on the other side if people work on it. But this guy, he sounds like somebody I'd like to meet. Seriously, I may not need to say that because he doesn't need to come to my house.
Right.
I've got plenty of activity over here. But
That does happen on this show, but we have some weird stuff that happens on this show. Oh yeah.
Yeah?
Oh yeah, it happens.
Well, you know what? There are lines of spirits waiting in line to come through. They're just looking for a way to come through, to let us know. See, they are evolving too in the afterlife. They're going through spiritual evolution also. And so in the early years, when, way back when, centuries ago, spirit activity was very common. And people were more willing to look at it in days gone by. But still, there was a bad name. People were witches, or they were this, or they were that. If they had these abilities, or they were sent to the river below the mountains to put their hand in the running water and look in the water and see who they could see, and they were called different names. And then with the age of industry, what happened was people became more attached to science and more attached to mechanical goings on, and so there was this move away from this sort of thing. And that's when you had, in the Victorian times, a rise in spiritualism. Spiritualism is a religion. And so, unfortunately, there were some fakes, and they ruined it for everybody.
Well, it was right at the emergence of the Industrial Revolution,
Right,
It's like you can almost see science and spirituality and religion coming to a head to each other,
Yeah. I thought it was, I thought it was great. So, I actually went to Lilydale for years, and would talk to some of the people who had the history, and I just found it really fascinating.
Wow.
And but then what happened was science became the religion of the day, and so people they would go to church, but death was something that wasn't really talked about in a healthy way at times. And so when people were passing, centuries ago, they would pass at home, they would pass with their family around, they would start talking about departing visions. Some had departing visions a year before they passed.
Abraham
I read
Lincoln.
one account. Yes, he did.
Yeah, he had it.
That's right. Yes. And so these are amazing accounts. But then things began to change. It all began to change. And so it became, if people were involved in religion, it was almost a little antiseptic. And right now I'm working on a book. They still say Jews don't believe in an afterlife. Well, that's just not true. I think that the Holocaust has a lot to do with Jews not coming forward and talking about this. And so as a Jewish person who has had experiences and who knows other Jewish people who have had experiences, I thought it was time to begin putting together a book on Jewish afterlife experiences.
Mm-hmm.
But the Holocaust put a real damper on that. So I think that there are periods of time throughout history where this sort of stuff, it was called something different. Oh, she's a seer, or like I said, a witch, or the sorcerer, or whatever the term that was used, pops up, and then there's some acceptance. There's acceptance in secret, or there's acceptance like during the Victorian age, but then there are times when it just goes underground. It just goes underground. And then people are afraid to talk about their experiences.
Well,
and they feel...
This is the reason why I do this show, is because to give people that open forum. We got to cut to commercial break. Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off. But we got to cut to commercial break. And when we come back, I will have the phone lines open, guys. You can call in. You can call in now. It's 219-230-4444 or Skype ID OOJBland00. You can call in on those two lines. Are open right now. You can call in. And I'd love to hear, I know, like I said before, that people have had... It's a very common experience, I think, for most people. If they've never experienced anything in the paranormal, there's a good chance a lot of people have experienced this. Either knowing somebody who had a deathbed vision or an afterlife communication with somebody, a loved one who's passed on. I think this is the most common, Carla. You got to admit, there's all these different paranormal experiences, but that's got to be one of the most common ones for people to have.
It is.
All right, guys, when we come back, Carla, Wills, Brandon, we're going to talk about these experiences. And we were talking a little bit about the history, like spiritualism and movement and that. I'd like to talk about how we dealt with death way back in the day, you know. It's something that's been always with us, death. Every culture, every history, we all have had the one thing in common. It's never changed. We all die. We all have somebody we care about die. It's what life is. And these experiences are a view into that other world, because I believe there is another world. I've seen enough to have a complete faith in that. All right, guys, we'll be back after this commercial break.
L&M Radio Network, shining the light of truth.
Tonight on Paranormal Soup, our guest is Carla, Wills, Brandon. We're talking about near-death experiences, deathbed visions, and I can't say the empathic, which I won't be able to say it, but be able to know somebody died from a distance. I know so many stories, being in the paranormal, being an investigator, being a show host, and I tell people what I do. If I hear a paranormal story, I'd say 7 out of 10 are along those lines. It's not the haunted houses. It's not any of that. It's I get that. But it's these experiences. Because what touches us most, what affects us most? You talk about trauma. Death is one of the worst traumas. When you lose somebody you love, or a family member or a friend, and or yourself, you have a near-death experience. These are traumatic events that will last with you forever. And these experiences, nobody wants to talk about because they don't want to be judged or seem to be crazy. Well, that's why we do this show, people. Paranormal Soup. We are about giving you an open place. Nobody judges you for these experiences, and that's what we're talking about tonight. You can call in. There are a few ways you can do it, or 2 ways at least tonight. There's the phone line, the old-fashioned way, 219-230-4444. You can call in on it, 219-230-4444. There's also the Skype ID. If you have Skype, OOJBLANDOO or OOJBland00. That's the Skype ID you can call in on. There is also the Soup Live Chat 800 Live Chat. That's our video Skype line. It can be kind of wonky, so if it doesn't work, try calling back in on one of those lines. And if you do call in, just wait until we call upon you. It might be a few minutes or more, because I want to get into this conversation tonight with Carla and give her a lot of room to talk, because it's important. When we talk about death-phobic society, that is dead on what we have a problem in this society. We're all going to die. We're all going to face it. And we need to talk about these experiences. That's how religions were formed. That's how people got an idea of the afterlife, was talking about these experiences. I mean, that's what the Bible's full of. All right, let's get back to our guest. You still there with me, Carla?
Yeah, I'm right here.
Now,
How are you doing?
doing good. Now, you were kind of getting into like a little bit of the history of like spiritualism and all that, but have you looked into like, I talk about the Bible, the visions people have had in that, there's definitely things that, they're talking about the afterlife. I don't get, what I don't get is people's reluctance, at least in the religious aspect. I get it in science, but people that the way churches and religions have handled these experiences, like you said, can be very, what do you call it, antiseptic or
Antiseptic. Yeah,
but you think they'd be the one place you could turn to, because I mean, what do they talk about is the afterlife and believing in an afterlife, that this should be the acceptable place to talk about it.
Well, what kills me, I mean, it just really gets me, because I think that the Old Testament and the New Testament, or the Torah, which we use, there are so many examples of near-death experiences, after-death contact, near-death, departing visions. It just drives me nuts that religious leaders can't look at their doctrine and see it for what it is. It's like they brush right over it. I put out a memo to Jewish rabbis of a certain branch all over the nation. And I asked them to please let their congregations know that I was doing this work, and to please contact me, have them contact me. And this was about 5 years ago when I was starting this journey with this book, then had to put it on hold because of, I kind of need attention, so I thought I'd be a good mother. But long story short was, I didn't get a lot of response from that. And I was shocked. Yeah. I was really, really shocked. Now, certain branches of Judaism, like Hasidic movement or some of these other more Orthodox groups, they embraced it. They take it in. And so, but I did have one Orthodox / Hasidic guy give me a hard time because I'm a woman, and why should I be talking about these things? So it was like, okay, well, we won't have any more conversations here. So, but when I'm talking to clergy people, I'll say to them, okay, so right here, I'm not a scholar, but right here, what you're looking at an afterlife contact. You're looking at somebody who was a sensitive, who could make contact with those in an afterlife. And they just kind of like want to shake their heads, and they act like I'm the, devil incarnate, and they just don't want to talk about it, which I think is a huge loss to their congregation. Now, I will tell you that we had the high holidays, and the high holidays are a very important Jewish time. It's where we really take stock of ourselves, what we need to look at, what we haven't done so well in. And so we have a pretty progressive rabbi, and he did his whole talk on death and dying. Well, maybe not his whole talk, but he did a major part of his main talk on death and dying. And it was just so incredibly refreshing to hear this. And I've heard this with some Catholic priests, and I've heard this with some Christian leaders, but the numbers are so low. They're just so low. Right. I mean, these guys are like spearheading a totally different idea. They're kind of like bringing it back to what it was at the beginning of the formation of their religion. And so, but it is frustrating when I go to funerals. I get very frustrated.
I can imagine.
At some of these funerals, it's like, sometimes the spirit of the person who has passed is right there at the funeral. They're there. Oh, yeah. I mean, they want to see. Yeah, they want to see what's going on. And so, some of these people who get up and talk about their lives or about their religious beliefs or about what's happened to them, I just sit there along with a spirit person and just shake my head, like, who is this person? Do you know who this person is talking about you? So, yeah, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. I know there are a few books out there on this topic, but they're so far and few between. But I always get excited when I do see one. I saw one recently about The Origins of Christianity. It's a new book. And so I really want to check that out. But people really, if they belong to a particular religion, it's really important for them to study the history of their religion, the true history, the roots, where the origin of that religion came from, because it may be a branch of another religion.
I find it funny. I always was interested in religion, even though I've always been agnostic. And I've read, I'm not an expert or anything, but I've read a lot on different religions, and I find it funny that, I would know more about somebody's religion than they knew about it themselves sometimes. And be like, well, why aren't you interested in it? This is, if you believe in it, you'd think you'd be reading the books and getting in, but it's not that
mind-boggling.
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling, isn't it? Yes. So I know, we talk about this all the time in the groups that I am with, about how people who are, it's like the atheists and the agnostics have more information about religion than those who are practicing a religion.
That's so sad. That's so sad.
It is sad. I mean, my sons have more information about sensitives and, afterlife contact than some of the atheist friends they hang around with. So, what are you going to do? Such is life. But I think that your show is one of those groundbreaking shows following in the tradition of Art Bell that gives a forum for people, as you said, to talk about their stuff. They can be anonymous and talk about it. Exactly. And then they can find resources, and then they can hook up with other like-minded people and realize that, no, you're not so goofy. No, your aunt wasn't crazy when she said she saw Grandpa standing there with her husband waiting for her to cross over and telling her it's not scary and she'll be okay, and showing her what it looks like in the afterlife. So the secret continues to be broken, but it's not happening fast enough, especially with this baby boomer generation. It's really something.
What I find interesting, some of these, when you talk about the deathbed visions and stuff, is just some of the things that the witnesses of people who've died have seen, like mist coming out of a body. Different, like sometimes it's a blue glow, sometimes it's just a white mist. I've always found those accounts interesting. What was your research you found with people witnessing those kind of things? Because to me, how can you argue multiple people? Not multiple people are going to hallucinate when they see these things.
Well, I'll tell you a funny story. My sister Lila passed away about 6 months ago.
I am so sorry.
And thank you. And before she passed, I had a dream. And I had a dream. She came to me in the dream. She was dressed as always, cocky as always, backpack slung over her shoulder. And she said, "Well, I'm going now. Goodbye." And that's all she said. And then a few hours later, we received a phone call that she had indeed passed. But when my father-in-law was passing, and he was an agnostic, and so when I would try to talk to him about some of this stuff, he'd kind of like have maybe an eighth of one ear open listening to it. But he was also a Holocaust survivor, so,
Right.
That brings with it a lot of spiritual issues. But my sister, while my father-in-law was laying in his bed, and he couldn't really speak anymore, but he could hear really well, and he would get really mad at the doctors because they would talk as if he was already dead.
Ugh.
Well, then my sister noticed that there was this aura around him that was turning there was less color in the aura. My husband also saw his spirit coming and going, and it was a pastel, misty sort of color. It was just, he came home and he said, "Oh my gosh, you're not going to believe this." But my sister said to Pop, she said, "Sylvan, go to the light. You can go to the light now. It's okay." And he looked at her like he could kill her.
So he was still, his eyes were open. He could see her, and she's saying this. I would look at her that way too.
Yes. But when I looked, but I looked at him too, and his aura was more gray in color. Yeah. And then my husband saw the pastel mist raising from his body. So, that is a hard one. When there's so many accounts from spiritualism days to even farther back about seeing something, a body double rising from the dying person's body, and it is an exact double. hovering over the physical body, along with the different colors that you mentioned, the blues, the grays, the white colors that can be seen rising from a body. Some people see what's called a silver cord. I have a friend who researches that. And the silver cord is connected from spirit to the physical. And the history on that is fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a resurgence and interest in that. And people are talking about it again, about how that cord is severed at the moment of physical death. But that cord connects the spirit to the physical body while that body is alive. And so that's why we're basically I don't want to say entangled in a bad way, but we're entangled with our spirit for our entire life. But all of these visions of all of these things, and you talk to somebody and it's in the Bible too, there are examples of this in the Bible, and you talk to somebody about this who seems to be maybe even real spiritual, and they just look at you like with a cocked eye. Like
I'll never understand that. I'll never understand that. Because I learned that the hard way. I tried to talk to people that were Christians, really spiritual, believe that stuff, so I thought it'd be all right. Talk about some of these experiences, and some were definitely open to it, but most of them would give you that exactly cockeye look, like, okay, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, you're talking about heaven and angels and stuff and God and all that. I mean, like, I'm talking about what I know and experience. I haven't had any angels. I'm not saying I don't believe in them, but I've had spirits. I've had spirits that acted like an angel and saved my butt. But that's what I know.
Yes, and there's so many accounts of some sort of heavenly being, like what my son saw. And my son was 3 years old when he mentioned the name Damas. Where on earth would he have heard that?
I still think that's so creepy, Carla. I'm sorry. I know death phobic I am here, but
it'll pass. But yeah, Damas and Hebrew to Aramaic is angel of death, but it's a very positive escort who assists those who are passing to the afterlife. So, I mean, it may be called a different name. It may look different. There's some discussion about how those who come to us to escort us to an afterlife, they won't be the person who abused you or hurt you. It'll be people that were loving and caring and in your life. So, I mean, there are people who study angels. They study all the history on angels. They study all the cultures who believe in angels. And so, I mean, you can't have these sorts of things coming up over and over again, century after century after century, with people having experiences with these things, and there not be something. I think society interferes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. We do have a phone call on the line I want to take if you're all right with that.
Sure.
Okay. We got Tyler on the line. How you doing tonight, Tyler?
Pretty good. Can you hear me all right?
I hear you sound crystal clear, Tyler.
Awesome. I'm trying out my new mic that I got from school. My computer crashed, so I kind of missed part of the show, but I caught the tail end and can totally relate and share a story of mine.
Yes, definitely. That's what it's for.
I've had a lot of loss in my life, and I've actually witnessed some things, like my grandfather. He was dying in his bed, and he was being taken care of hospice, and they kind of gave us a pamphlet, kind of give us a what to expect. And he was, towards the end, he was reaching towards the sky, and he says, "I see them. I see them. I can see my uncle. He passed away. I mentioned this in the chat room. I played Amazing Grace at his funeral, and I felt his hand touch my shoulder, and it brought me into tears. My grandfather was sitting right next to me, and his arm wasn't around me, and there was nothing around me, so I kind of felt that presence of him. And so back to my grandfather passing away, he was just reaching for the heavens and just saying, "I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go." It was pretty enlightening to know that he was going in peace.
You know, there was somebody there to take him. It sounded like too, right? You said he was
Yeah.
seeing somebody or your uncle.
He was seeing my uncle, and then also they had a child that passed away, their first child, and they would have had 9 kids if that child was to live. So, and my dad said that he was talking about that too, saying how he sees him. So it was a pretty intense experience to see my grandfather go like that, but it was kind of enlightening to know that, you know, he's watching over me, and I do see him in dreams too, a lot of dreams. So
I know exactly how you feel with losing a grandparent. That was a tough one for me, and I've definitely had those kinds of experiences.
yeah, and I feel like he's still there, and all that other things. Like I went roller skating. He was big into roller skating, and I found a toothpick at the bottom of my shoe when I was tying it, and that's what he used to do, is roller skate with a toothpick in his mouth.
Oh wow!
So, you know, it's just certain things that remind you of the loved ones that passed, and you know, maybe that's just our way of connecting again. You know.
Well, I think your accounts are so wonderful. I really, really do. My son had a after-death communication with his grandfather in a dream form, and my son and his grandfather used to play golf with plastic golf stuff in the house, and it would really upset my mother-in-law. And so he had a dream of them doing this, and you know, basically what he got out of that was that he was okay, not to worry. And Aaron talks a lot about how he feels his grandfather around. And so for you, your grandfather, yes, a lot of times folks will reach up. They will reach both arms up and even sit up out of bed. They can even come out of a coma. If they have Alzheimer's, they can become clear, and they just sit up, and they're looking up, and they may say, I want to go home. It's time for me to go. They may start talking about who they're seeing. Sometimes they do what's called the departing vision stare, where they don't even say anything, and they just start looking up and holding a hand up. And so, you know, your grandfather, he came by to let you know that he was okay. And so with the roller skating, that's a great story. Yeah. I mean, he continues to let you know he's there. And I bet you sometimes if you're in a bad spot, you might be able to feel his hand on your shoulder again.
Yeah, I feel it now. I can feel him. I'm shaking right now. I can't sit still. I feel his presence, you know, talk about his story. But yeah. I've been lost without him, but I know he's still here, you know. But yeah, just I don't know what else to say.
But you know,
well, he can come. You can talk to him too. While he has his hand on your shoulder. Okay.
There was a time when I was messing around and not obeying my mother, and he came into a dream very mean, like.
Oh wow!
But it was loving. I could see the look that he used to give me as a child, and I knew that was to time to mature and grow up.
So remember, I don't know if you heard me talking about spirit team, that there are spirits who stay with us all of our lives. And a lot of times grandparents will stick around and parents will stick around, and we'll have those encounters where we're kind of getting a little bit of a what for from them, like snap out of it, or, oh, my grandmother came to me after she passed, and I was just so upset about her passing. And so I had a dream about her dressed all in purple and was very shiny, and she was wearing heels that clicked on the linoleum, and her kitchen was very white. And she walked in, she took me by the shoulders, she shook me, and she said, "Get over it," and then turned around and walked away. I thought, okay. So it's kind of, they parent us and grandparent us and watch over us. And I think it's really great that you feel and have seen your grandfather. And so you know he's there.
I'm sensitive as it is to the my dreams. I talk about this on the show. I see things all the time, but it's just that story is pretty thrilling for me to talk about. So, but yeah, he was a big influence in my life, and that's what's awesome to know is he's still guiding me even as I become an old man one day. You know, still can go back on that stuff. So,
well, he is okay. The thing he is, and he's standing behind you right now, and he has his right hand on your shoulder, and he feels very emotional, and he's going to be there, and you can actually ask him for help when you need it.
Oh yeah, he's there. I'm ready to keep on going for the next couple of days, and hopefully he's I was stressing out about my computer crashing out, so
I know that stress.
And I just made some music magic tonight, and I was really sad, and I'm hoping he's seeing where I'm going with it, even though it's pretty heavy for his tasting, but
maybe that's why you shut it off.
Well, I'm just trying to do something positive, but you know.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Tyler, for calling in and sharing. That's exactly why I worked really hard. We're almost in the 4th year. I was like, I'm going to make way to make sure I have phone lines, because this is why I do the show, is for people to call in and share these experiences, especially on these kind of topics. So thank you so much, Tyler, for sharing tonight.
Oh, well, thank you for having
Tyler.
me tonight, Jason. Thank you, and nice meeting you. All right, later, guys.
Later. You know, you mentioned about Alzheimer's patients coming, or dementia patients coming out of it near death. My grandfather, who I had a distant relationship with because of my father, who took off when I was young, I would see my grandfather a lot on holidays and that. And in his last years of his life, they put him in a nursing home that was far away from me, so I didn't get to see him. Mm-hmm. But the story that came down that I found out at his funeral, I had an aunt that would take care of him, and she'd go to the nursing home, visit him down there a lot, and she would always wheel him up to a window in the morning that he would look out of. But he hadn't talked in like 2 years. He just stopped talking. Well, the day he died, this is the story, it came from her. The day he died, she did like she always did in the morning. She rolled him up to the window to look out at nature and, see nice things. And he laughed, which he hadn't done. And he goes, and he spoke for the first time in 2 years. The only thing he said was, "Life's a joke." And then he died 2 hours later.
Oh man, he got the gist. He got it.
I was always wondered, that's always going to stick with me, hearing that story. And my aunt she's passed on, and I actually and she was my aunt by marriage, and my uncle I had a tenuous relationship with, but when they both passed, drug abuse.
I'm sorry.
When they both passed, like I said, I didn't have close relationships with these people because of the way their lives were, and my family was pretty messed up on that side. But I had this really crazy dream where they were in it, and it was this really beautiful home, had all these different children there, and other family members. They were trying to tell me who they were, because I really don't know that family. And my grandfather was there. My step grandmother, everybody was there. It was like, this was like the Bland clan, which I'm very distant from. And they were like trying to let me know I was still, that I'm a part of the family, that they're there for me. Huh. That was the dream I had, because I always had a distant, a really troubled relationship with my father's side of the family.
Right, right.
So, it makes you wonder, those last moments, what can make a person that hasn't talked in 2 years just suddenly be able to speak. Or I've heard instances of people like you said, they'll be totally not responsive for weeks, months, and suddenly wake up, be like, I'm hungry, I want something to eat, and like talking to their family. And and then and even knowing they're going to pass, like saying, this is it.
Right.
I've heard those stories, and they're just so incredible because it's like the body just gives everything last that it has, so this person can wake up and spend a moment with their family and say goodbye.
Yeah, but that's the beauty of it. When Alzheimer's is a brain disease, it's about a buildup of plaque upstairs, and it's a disability, and it's progressive, and dementia is too. And so when somebody comes to and they start having conversations with us here and maybe others in the next world, and they have a smile on their face and they're at peace with death, okay, so the brain is not creating this. And that's what I always use as an example for people who just will not understand that, look, you have a spirit part, and then you have a physical part. Then the physical part is dependent on your spiritual self. And so this is about a journey. You're going on a journey in this life. Things are going to be good. Things are going to be bad. That's part of the journey. Those are part of the lessons. And the lessons are, how are you going to react to these situations? Or are you going to get some help when you're upset? Or are you going to get some help when you need to get help? If you have an alcohol problem and a door opens and somebody is saying, hey, there's this free treatment down here, are you going to walk through it or not? So it's pretty much the same thing with all aspects of navigating life. And so those on the other side will come to us during crisis moments. I was in the hospital for a long, long time. I'll just say that. I'm not going to get into it. But I knew all my relatives were in the room with me. I knew it. Even though I was on heavy medication and I'd been put through the mill, I still felt comfortable, like everything's going to be okay, even though it feels like I'm going to die right now. I still knew everything was going to be okay because I felt their presence there. And so I love what your grandfather said. It's like when we cross over, all of those fears and things that we were afraid of, or about death and dying and where we go and who we are, it's like it evaporates. And then it is. Life is the joke. Yeah. I've heard that before, by the way. I'm not going to.
Really?
I have. Yes, I have. It's like there's this awareness that we move to the next leg of the journey, that we don't get hit on the head with a wand by the good tooth fairy and sit on a cloud and play a violin or harp when we cross over. We don't evaporate when we cross over. We discovered that, wow, there's still more here.
Well, I always thought I want to know about the life is a joke, because what my imagination goes with it is like him seeing something that made him realize all the bitterness and regret and all these things that had to have plagued my grandfather, because they had a lot of down things in the family, that it was for nothing. It was just a joke, it's why did we don't have to worry about all this stuff or something. I don't know. My mind's always boggled about that last statement of his.
I think you need to, you know what it means already. And he's kind of laughing and nodding his head. So you already know that that's what he meant. All the time wasted. Yeah. All the time wasted on pettiness and, not enjoying life and not experiencing more love and maybe not being as gentle or as kind as he could have been. And then watching those who are surviving him and seeing them continue to make the same mistakes.
Exactly.
So, yeah, that's exactly it. And so that's why he said, because he had one foot in this world and one in the next. And so he knew where he was going. And so he could see where he had come from. And so that's why he said it. And so that was the message to you. He was giving you a message to, when you have hard times, difficult times, look for the solution, no matter what it takes. If you are upset with somebody, talk to somebody about it, air your feelings, think of solutions. Do you want this person to continue to be in your life, or do you need to let go of this particular person? So, yeah, he was giving you a very good message there based on his experience.
I also had one of these visions of him. I used to do meditation and all that, and I do this thing. I think I've talked about it on the show where I'll close my eyes, and you see that purple when you get the black and you get the purple chemicals in your eyes that make you see that. Well, I'll see it, and it always turns into images. Yeah. I can see images, and well, I see images, and sometimes those images become really clear, and like I get sucked into them and do like a dream state. I know people are like, "Whoa, weird Jason here," but this is the truth. And one of those times, it was not long after his death, I saw him, and you talked about your husband's near-death experience and all that. Right. Well, what I saw was him in this beautiful place. There was a river, and he was on the banks of this little river, or even like a stream. I wouldn't even say it was a river; it was a stream. Beautiful stream, and it was that purple usually is all black and white. Everything turned to it was like when the Wizard of Oz goes from black and white to color, and it was just very immense. Colorful. And I was like taken back, and I was like locked in this vision, and he was there. It was like a telepathic thing. Like he's telling me, "I'm here, I'm good, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry we didn't have the relationship we should have."
Well, there you go.
We got two people calling in. I need to take one of those here. We better take one of them. I got somebody else trying to call in. Whoever just tried calling in, hold on. I only got one line available either way. Who do we got on the line here? I think we got Zach.
Hey, Jason, it is Zach. How you doing, my man?
How you doing? You always have great questions tonight, or do you have your own story you want to share too? I know you have your own experiences, but thank you for calling in.
Well, I'm going to do just one of each. Carla, it's very nice to meet you. I wanted to go back to the topic of near-death experiences. I've heard of different stories about people when they have a near-death experience. I mean, it does vary. And some people, they envision heaven. Some people envision hell. Some people on the verge of death, they claim that it's all black. They can't see anything. My question to you is, when it comes to like a near-death experience, why is it that so many people, they just have these different visions of what the afterlife is like?
Well, it has to do with, I think that in the afterlife, so I like jazz. I like hanging out with people who play a lot of jazz. And since I live in the South where there's Mardi Gras, I love Mardi Gras, just love it. So I gravitate towards people who are into Mardi Gras and jazz. And so it's the same way in the afterlife. We're going towards people who are like-minded. Because, as I said earlier, we take ourselves to the other side. And so most people have a similar experience with seeing the afterlife, but then there are those who have different experiences. I had a friend who was a cardiologist in Florida. She was this little Jewish woman who carried around a great big purse. She cracked me up, and she studied hellish near-death experiences. Now, each individual's hellish experience was different, and there was a purpose for that. The message was different. They each learned something different that they needed to learn, even on the brink of physical death. And so I really do feel that we see things that now, like you, Jason was talking about the river, or you were talking about the river. Who was talking about the stream?
It was a stream. It was a stream.
That's right. Okay. I've had numerous accounts of vivid colors and people being on one side of the river or the stream, and they're on the other side.
That's what it was. He was on the other side of it to me.
Yes. And they're either, if they're passing, their loved ones are coming to get them, or if it's not time for them to pass, their loved ones are just letting them know that they're okay. But not everybody has that vision. Not everybody has that experience. So a lot of it depends on what they found in research on departing between the U.S. and people in India was that people who have religion and who are very into their religion will see the creators of their religion, whereas those in India are going to see those religious icons that worked for them in their culture. So we take ourselves to the other side. And so there is no right or wrong near-death experience. I had a near-death experience. I was, again, in the hospital, and all of a sudden the room turned golden, and the hallway outside became a corridor. And I noticed there were a lot of people in the room of all nations. In this room, I couldn't see in there. I wasn't allowed to see in there. But then I heard this voice, and this voice was some sort of higher being. And the voice was very comforting and very kind. And I didn't hear words, but the message I got is that you're not supposed to go now. And because I had almost died. And then I saw, down the corridor, I saw my uncle and my mother and my grandfather. And next to them was this golden tunnel. And they couldn't hear me. They couldn't see me, but they were having a great time chatting. So that's not like a traditional near-death experience, but that worked for me. So if you have a near-death experience, if it imprints on you and you feel it so strongly and it's something you're going to remember for the rest of your life, it was real. It was real. You don't have to leave your body, go through the tunnel. Yeah, you can have, it's real for you. And so you need to grab onto that. And you can make some contact too, because I'm hearing, okay, so like Jason, you're sensitive for crying out loud, and you're clairvoyant. So that needs to be, you might need some assistance with that. I'll be the boss here.
People heard it on a show. It's something I've fascinated by and scared of, and kept a healthy distance from, like, to an extent.
That's what we all do.
Yeah,
that's what we all join the crowd.
Zach,
yeah. Okay. Oh, you're admitting it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'll admit it. Zach,
okay.
Did you have a story too you wanted to share? We got a commercial break coming up, so.
Yeah, I'll keep it nice and short. It really is. It's not just my experience, really, but it's more of my mother's experience on that. And I did tell the story once on the show that my mother used to have a pit bull Queensland mix. His name was Zeke.
Cool.
Very, very, very big dog, very beautiful dog. And unfortunately, she did have to put him down after he attacked, actually, one of the other dogs that we had at the time.
Oh, wow.
And of course, I mean, he was one of the dogs where he wouldn't instigate a fight, but yet he'd finish it, to summarize it up. And my mother was extremely heartbroken because this was her dog. I mean, and this dog, this dog, apart from what had happened, I mean, he was the coolest dog you could ever have. Very protective, very loyal. He was awesome. But anyway, she had to put him down. But I remember that about 2 to 3 weeks after he had passed, I came into the kitchen, and inside of my kitchen, there's a sliding glass door that leads over to the backyard. And I remember I was sitting over at the counter that we have in the kitchen. I was eating dinner, and I look over at that screen door, and I see him almost transparent. I could see where.
Oh, you're breaking up, Zach.
Over on his back, I could see. That's. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's saying poor connection on your end. I hear you, but you're fuzzy.
Eric, can you hear me now?
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay.
Well, what I heard is that.
But anyway, I could see. Jason.
Yeah, you're there. You were cutting out, But what we heard was you're talking about you could see your dog translucent, your mom's dog translucent in your home.
Yeah, he was right outside of that screen door there, and I could see his spots, and he was walking towards where my parents' room is at. My mom was sleeping in there at the time. And I didn't mention anything to my mother for a couple weeks because she was still grief-stricken over it. And then I finally brought it up to her, and then she told me, she says, yeah, I felt something climb into bed with me that night.
Yeah. You still there, Zach? Uh-oh. We might have lost him now.
See, I think that's a great account right there.
Yeah, you talk about pets. Oh, you're breaking up, Zach. I'm going to have to let you go. I'm sorry. You there?
Yep, I'm still there, brother. Yeah, I fully understand.
Yeah. But I get the gist of the story. That is incredible. Thank you so much for calling in, Zach. You always have such great calls. Thank you.
But
yeah,
see,
you're very welcome, brother. You have a good night.
You too.
Night.
But
see, what's so wonderful is that the mother and he had an experience. Yeah. Both of them had an experience. And so they can validate each other. So what are the odds of that happening in real world?
Well, you talk about pets, people, pets are a ghost or a real thing or these experiences. Because I had that. I had a cat die, my first real pet, Patches. She used to sleep with me in my bed. And after she passed, it wasn't right after she passed. I went through some dark paranormal stuff during this period. But after that dark paranormal stuff went away, she came to me. And it was the craziest thing, Carla. It was like just dim light in the darkness of my room. I could just see her and I could hear her purring. I could feel her little paws on the bed. I mean, I broke down in tears and I watched her, that little just haze that I could see of her fade away. And I get chills just thinking about it. And I wasn't scared. I was just so sad at the same time and happy to see her, but I was so sad because it was like her way of coming back to say, yeah, I'm all right.
Yes, pets do that. I mean, people are sometimes afraid to talk about that because they're afraid that they're going to really be crucified for it, to be honest with you. But I have lots and lots of pet accounts. Michael's had experiences with our pets. I've had experiences. My mother-in-law had an experience. My father-in-law took their dog to the vet for a checkup and then was told that the dog was full of cancer, and so the dog was put down. Before my mother-in-law knew it, she was back at home having lunch, and she looked up at the clock just to see what time it was, and then she suddenly felt a brush of fur against her. And so people have these experiences. And the problem is people don't feel comfortable talking about them. They don't know where to go to talk about them. I had a message from a woman who she just today, and she said that she works EMT, and that when she's on an ambulance with somebody and they're going to the hospital, that she has departing visions. She has departing visions, and I got the sense that she saw spirits, and said it was very difficult for her because she didn't know what to do. And so, if she's listening, my message is, you need to talk to the spirits and just tell them that you're glad they're there, and if they have any information for you, to please pass it on to you. That if her patient is conscious, to just ask. Do you have relatives living in the area? Do you have relatives who've just passed? But to just talk to the person if they're conscious. We have to be. She's doing triage on two different people. She's doing triage on the person who is in her care, and then here's the worried spirit person, or the spirit person who's come to help her that's there too. So it can get kind of confusing. That happens in my practice all the time, where we're doing clinical trauma work, and here comes the spirit, and so the spirit wants me to tell the person I'm working with that they're here, And I can't do that because they'll take my licenses away. So what I say, well, no, you need to go and talk to her. You need to go to her in a dream. You can tell me some things if you want me to know some things about her that will help her while I'm working with her. But in a professional sense, there are nurses that have those experiences, very few doctors, but a few. And then people who work EMT, definitely. So
what reminds me of the story you heard the story about, was it it was rescue, I think it was fire department, or was it police? I can remember a car that was upside down in the water, and people heard the woman crying for help. And when they got there, they realized she'd been dead. She'd been dead for a while, but there was a baby inside. That's, the people testified to that.
Yes, several people testified to that. And so our problem is, first, people don't talk about it. They don't want to talk about it. And then secondly, those that do talk about it, it's like it's a formula. Well, you have to experience this, and you have to experience that, and you have to experience this and that in order for it to be a true near-death experience, afterlife contact. They're just like all these rules. And I'm here to tell you, there aren't rules. There aren't rules. So, your family on your father's side, your grandfather who passed away had regret that he hadn't made more effort to be closer to you. And so he's trying to rectify that. Yeah, he's still trying to rectify that by being a spirit person who can be there for you.
No, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
It's okay. But afterlife contact can come in all different forms and all different ways, and we just have to be open-minded about it and willing to research ourselves.
We do have another phone call I'm going to take before the commercial break here. Who do we have on the phone line?
Hi, Jason. It's Debbie.
Hi, Debbie. Thanks for calling in.
Hi. I haven't had any near-death experiences, but I wanted to share an experience that I had with my grandmother before she passed when I was back in my 20s that completely changed my way of thinking. And it was similar to your first caller that called in, and I got to see her and spend several days with her while she was basically comatose before she died, but she woke up. And shortly before she died, she started to say the different names of like her husband, my grandfather, and her brother who had passed shortly before her. And that experience in itself completely changed my belief system in that we definitely do exist after our bodies die. And since then, I've been going through my spiritual awakening and developing, some of my own gifts. And I recently also got to see all of my loved ones on the other side during a meditation that I did. And they didn't speak to me like by moving their mouths or anything, but they were all there and they all like individually embraced me. And I was still getting information even though they weren't speaking, and I could feel their love and just knew that they were there, and it was such a healing experience for me, and I just want to experience a whole lot more of it, so I'm trying to develop my gift. I'm desperately trying to develop my
It's coming. It'll come. It's coming. You've got a little bit of a hold on it. And a lot of times when we have an experience with a loved one who passes, like a departing vision, what happens is it sort of like opens up a door in our soul. And that part of us that was always there becomes more obvious. And at first, a lot of people get kind of confused by it. Some people even get scared. And then there are those who go to therapy for it. And so when we have these experiences and we get past the fear part, or if we never had the fear part, we want more. And so we're in a mode of...
I think it took away all of my fear of dying. I think that was what,
Yes.
That right there was what ultimately took away my fear of, dying. Because, knowing that we continue to exist once our body dies, that took that fear completely away from me, and that allowed me to become more open to the spiritual world and wanting to tap into it and find out more about it. And I was raised a Christian, and so I believed in heaven or hell, but I didn't really know all of the the spiritual, that it wasn't a sin to communicate with them, and that they were always there with us. I didn't believe in that. I didn't know that they were always there watching over and guiding and giving us information and love from the other side. I didn't know any of that. And so once I started in my awakening and I started finding more of that out and started being able to feel it and receive it through either clairsentience or claircognizance and occasionally clairvoyance, it opened a whole new world to me. And my life will never be the same again. And I have no fear of death at all anymore.
Well, that's what happens. I mean, why are we going to have a fear of death when we see that our loved ones are fine? Or we watch our loved ones pass and watch them reach out to deceased loved ones.
Or knowing you're going to get to see them again.
Yes. There's this old saying that goes something like, you can't live life unless you accept death and dying.
That's a good saying. We do got to go to commercial break. Thank you so much, Debbie, for calling in and sharing that story with us.
Thank you, Debbie.
You're welcome. Have a good night.
You too, hon. Thank you. We are going to commercial break, guys. We come back. The phone lines are still open. You call in 219-230-4444. You can call in on Skype ID OOJBland, OO, or OOJBLANDOO. Or there is the Soup Live Chat, 800 Live Chat. I don't know how well that's working. The video Skype line, you can call in. We can see you. But call in and share these stories. We've had some really great calls tonight sharing their experiences. To me, like I said, this is what death touches us all in some way. We're all affected by it. It's going to touch you some way, somehow. You're going to, someone close to you, a friend. It's touched us all. I experienced it at a young age. I lost a friend in kindergarten who died in a car crash, and then I saw her after that. I've had a lot of weirdness in my childhood. A lot of things that made me accept the reality of an afterlife that I feel not many other people have had. So I guess it gives me a perspective about it I've always had. We'll get back. I'll talk about my death phobia. Even with all this, I do have a death phobia. I do. With everything I know and about the afterlife, I have a little bit of a twinge of fear as I've gotten older about it. And we'll talk about that when we come back. And you can call in, guys. Call in right now. The lines are open. We'll be back just after this commercial break. Tonight, our guest is Carla Wills Brandon. We've been talking about near-death experiences, deathbed visions, people who have been able to feel the presence of other loved ones or see their loved ones after their death. These experiences, I touch everybody, and I know they have me. I myself have experienced so much, and, our last caller, Debbie, she talked about how she doesn't have a fear of death because of it. I used to be that way when I was younger, and I think a lot of those experiences affected me. But as I became a parent, I fear death because of separation from my children. I don't want to be separated from my children at all, or something to happen to them. I deal with this, and it all started when my grandmother passed away a few years ago, because I watched her in her couple hours before her death, and watched her taking her last breaths. It seared into my brain, and I had experiences where she came to me afterwards to let me know she was all right. But ever since then, I was a young father. I feared being separated. So I have to deal with myself some fears of death still that I have because of that. So do you have a fear of death after having a near-death experience or having this contact? Or is it freed you like it did Debbie? Call in. We do got a caller on the line. We will just hold on. We'll get you in just a sec. You still there with us, Carla?
Yeah, I'm right here.
But yeah, I mean, I hear Debbie's story. I'm like, that's how I should be. I should be, with all these experiences I have, I should have no fear of death. And I didn't when I was younger. But I tell you, Carla, when I became a father, and then it was around that, I was a young father when my grandmother passed away. Watching her take her last breaths and her looking in her eyes, she had Alzheimer's too.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
And she came to me after this in a very physical way. Like I saw her in a mirror at my work the day of her wake, and other people in my store. The moment I saw her, there was a rush of wind in my store, and one of the associates in my store felt it. And I came out about ready to tell everybody I'm going on break. I got to step out.
Yeah.
Because I'd seen her in the mirror look at me.
Yeah, yeah.
They tell me this happened in the store at the same time, is just to let me know that it was real. These experiences, I know, I've heard these stories from everybody, and for me, after that experience, I should be, accepting. At least she's all right. She's telling me she's all right on the other side, but I fear that separation. That's the only thing I fear of death is being separated from my children.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, so let's see. When I had my first son, even though I'd had all those experiences in my youth and leading up to his birth, there was this horrible fear. My mother died when she was 38. And my father was absent. And I had this horrible fear of not being there for them.
Exactly.
That's what it was all about. So a lot of times people have fears about death as they grow closer to the age at which a parent or grandparent passed over. That's not uncommon. Or if they have kids themselves, because
that's what did it for me.
That bond with kids, it's so strong. It's like a love sickness sometimes. And so just the mere thought of it. And so if there's any loss of father, so it sounds like your dad was not around.
No.
And so I don't want to be like him, God forbid.
Exactly.
And so the death phobia can be different. It is about separation. It's about abandonment and separation.
Exactly.
Yes. And so as your kids get older and as they become a tad more independent, I still am not ready to leave, even though both my sons are men. They're young men now. I know that they still need me. So that fear comes up sometimes, especially if one of them gets in trouble. But the fear of death itself is not the issue. It has to do with my connections with those that are still here. And so that's normal because when, like I said, we take ourselves to the other side. And if we have had difficult relationships, we're going to have grief and remorse about not putting into that relationship what we should have put into that relationship. And so on that other side, too, we're going to have issues. And so with our families, with our kids especially because of that love, that bond of love, what we have to do is we have to begin talking to those on the other side and talking to them about this fear, just talking to them about it. So your grandmother, your grandfather, you can talk to them, and you can talk to them about how you have this fear that you don't want the divide that you experience with to ever happen with your kids.
Exactly.
And that includes with you physically passing. You just start talking.
I do talk to my grandmother.
Okay.
I do because I feel there's times I feel her with me. I do. I feel her presence. I do want to we have some person that called in. If you're right, I'm going to take another phone call here. Who do we have on the line?
Dirk.
Hi, Dirk. This is my cousin Dirk?
Yes, it would be.
Oh man, awesome! Thank you for calling in. How you doing?
Not too bad. I'm sitting in Minnesota right now.
Just recently, Dirk here lost his grandmother, my grandmother's sister, my aunt.
Oh, okay. Wow.
There's two parts to this I was calling in about. The one is when I got the phone call from my mother about my grandma passing, I knew something was wrong. I was standing in the store at Walmart, actually, with my best friend Mike, and minutes before the phone call, I just got like a pit in my stomach. I'd been feeling fine all day. And as soon as that phone rang, I knew it was Grandma. I knew something had happened to her. So I guess I don't know how to take that, how I knew, kind of like, it was coming, but
okay.
I don't know that day how I knew, but it was
it's
weird.
common, Dirk. You call it weird, but it's so common.
Well, the thing is, one of the callers was talking about it felt like there was no talking. There was just a sensation, a feeling, it's a premonition. I have a friend who hates it when it happens because she always knows that somebody's going to pass. And so it is unnerving when that happens. And so for you, what happens is that we are all connected. And it doesn't matter if we're living, if we're passing, if we're in an afterlife, we are still all connected. And so you got the memo that this was going to happen. But you may not have had the information about what this was all about. And so that would definitely be something that I'd want to talk about and look into.
Yeah. One of the other things that I was going to bring up, Carla, I guess I thought maybe I could get your insight on, was when I was younger, I would have these dreams. And it's kind of like what Jason was talking about, the purplish black, and you got the extreme type deal. Yeah. And I'd see loved ones. I couldn't, hear what they were saying, but it was kind of like images where they'd show, your grandfather, grandmother together. They're kind of sitting there, happy together or whatnot. And it was with others, too, not just my grandparents or whatnot. But the thing I found strange and I could not wrap my head around was it was like you get in that, half-conscious state when you're starting to wake up. And as you're waking up, it feels like somebody dropped me. Like I was 6-10 inches off the bed and they just dropped me. And it's like you almost gasped for a breath for a second.
I know that exact feeling, Dirk. Yes. Oh yeah, I know that feeling.
Well, Jason, talk about it.
Well, no, I've had the vision I had of my grandfather on my dad's side. Like I said, it's like I got sucked into the vision and it became color and I was there. And when it was over with, it's like that. It was like, whew, like just drop back in. It was the word. That's exactly the way I could feel. You could say it, like you're floating above and dropped.
Well, yeah, there's this feeling of almost, and you were actually you were out of your body, by the way.
That's what I always wondered.
Some people even have a flying experience, where they feel like they're flying, and then boom. And so there is kind of like a almost choking feeling sometimes, kind of like catching your breath, feeling slammed into the bed, feeling unnerved, kind of like, and it happens during the hypnagogic state of sleep when we're just waking up. And so, or before, usually when we're just waking up. And it kind of feels sort of overwhelming, especially if you don't know what's going on. But people talk about leaving their bodies at night and going exploring, or they go visit with their spirit team. And then they come back to the physical body, and then they kind of slam back into the body. So it's a type of out-of-body experience. And even during those times, we might see some of our deceased relatives. So, but the feeling, I still don't like the feeling. I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah, it is kind of unnerving a little.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's unnerving. And I just wanted to ask you about that because, I haven't really gotten to talk to too many people about the paranormal type deal here, and it was just something that I remember growing up. But it hasn't happened so much nowadays. Every once in a while, but it happened quite a bit when I was younger, in my early 20s, and that it happened several times a week. I mean, it seemed like it was like I could see relatives or whatnot that had passed on before or something like that, and it was like always like somebody knocked the breath out of you, and it felt like somebody dropped you under the bed at the same time. It was like, wow. And my wife actually
go ahead.
scared one morning when I woke up because it had happened, and she had been lying next to me, and she's like, oh my gosh, are you okay? What's wrong? And I was like, wow, I don't know what's wrong.
Wow. You know, see, wasn't anything wrong. We have family gatherings. Yeah. We don't talk about this stuff. This is the first I've ever heard this from Dirk. You know, I don't get to see him very often. Your funerals, like recently, you know, some family occasions anymore, but we were kids and we grew up together and that. And, you know, this stuff doesn't come up at family gatherings.
No. Yeah, it is.
No, not in our family, at least. Go ahead, Carla.
Well, that's why it's good that you have a show like this, so you can listen and you can hear that there are lots and lots of us out here who have had similar experiences, and you can recognize that, no, this is something that I'm not the only one. That feeling like I'm the only one factor makes us discount our experience.
Yeah.
Even if they imprint on us, and there's part of us that goes, no, this really happened, I know it happened. But then we would like some validations from somebody who maybe has had an experience or knows about these experiences, and so we have to seek out shows like this and books and other things so that we can learn that, you know, decades, centuries ago, this was common conversation, and that now in our generations, people just don't want to talk about it as much.
They want to talk about the Kardashians or something stupid.
They do.
I don't get it. I feel like an alien on this country, in this world, because I just don't get it. Why people don't want to talk about these amazing things. Thank you so much, Dirk, for calling in. It means a lot. You know.
Thank you. Yes.
No problem, Jason. Like I said, I figured I get some insight from Carla, especially on that second part I had there, and that. But yeah, I mean, you guys are exactly right. It's kind of like validating. You know, for years it was like, man, I must be some weird guy. You know. This can't be normal or whatnot, and I guess calling in kind of like I wanted to validate that, you know, maybe somebody else out there has had the same type of experiences as I had.
Well, you're lucky you got your weird cousin Jason.
I know, right?
Yeah, talk to your cousin Jason. Jeez. You guys have relatives in common, experiences in common.
Oh,
My sister and I used to always talk about this stuff.
Well, thank you, Dirk, man. You have a great night.
I'll talk to you later, Jason.
All right. Later, bud.
Bye. Right. Well, that was kind of fun.
Yeah, the first time he's ever called in.
That's cool. That's really cool. See, in eras gone by, if somebody was preparing to pass, they would let people know where their will was. Even before writing a will, people would say, I want you to have this, and I want you to have that, and oh, by the way, somebody would maybe have a dream about the key being in the box and the dresser on the top shelf behind the hidden wall. You know, I mean, this is all normal conversation, and nobody thought twice about it. And today when these things happen, people don't trust it, they don't follow through on it, they don't get the message, because we get these messages from our loved ones in the next world, and they're trying to help us. They're trying to help us. Another friend of mine, she had a brain issue, and so she had brain surgery. I mean, they went in there, and she had a couple of incidences where there was stroke and all sorts of stuff, but she never worried about it. You know why? She saw 3 white beings in her room who told her it was going to be okay.
Wow.
And she still talks about that to this day. So she recently had a heart issue, and she knew she was going to be okay. So that's what these things do. But there are people who can still have death phobia, and the death phobia is usually related to something organic regarding, like, here and now current events.
Mm-hmm.
So And it does have to do with a fear of abandoning or being abandoned.
It would explain a lot. I accept that definitely for myself. I can't deny that's got to be the biggest part of it.
Yeah, and so it'll pass. I promise you, it'll pass. And also, your dad, you didn't have a dad there who could model these things for you. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like fathering, like parenting. I had to learn how to be a parent just trying to figure out what my friends were doing. And so with not having a parent there, it kind of left me out there. And so I was always afraid of doing the wrong thing.
Oh, God, yeah.
And so dying would be one of the wrong things. And so I had a lot of fear about that. And so we have all kinds of things going on here. We have what's going on in the here and now with science and with with religion and with free thought. Excuse me. And so people still to this day, with all of our advancements, they have issues with free thought. Some of the astronauts go back to the astronauts. I became friends with some of them, and they had some really interesting experiences, incredibly interesting. And I'm telling you, they were just, one of my friends had people coming to his door telling him that his experiences were false and that going to the moon was false and hauntings like that. But they had some fascinating experiences. But even NASA-based people couldn't hear it. And so they had to go start their own organizations, and they had to find like-minded people. Wow. And they ended up helping a lot of people. Yes, they did. And so we have people at NASA who actually have talked to astronauts who've had some of these experiences years ago. I mean, like years ago, because when I was young, I was in a circle where there were astronauts in my group, and I would listen to them, and there's something really refreshing about that. But then you'd have these other really scientifically minded people who would step up and say, oh, no, it was because of pressure, it was this, it was that, blah, blah. And so, but these had imprinted these experiences. And these people, when we have these experiences, we almost want to fight for them, if that makes any sense. It's like, this is mine. I had this experience. And so until I can find somebody to talk to who's not going to put me down, I'm going to find somebody or something that's going to validate me. That's not uncommon at all.
Oh, yeah.
So one Jewish man, he was really, really sweet. And this was right before he passed. He talked about seeing his relatives and friends on the other side of the river, and they were waving to him that it was okay to come. They were preparing him for a passing.
It seems to be a lot of these stories, with the deathbed visions, that there's somebody there to, guide you along or take you away. One of my favorite movies is What Dreams May Come. And when I wanted to say, when Zach called in and asked the questions, why do people have different experiences? One of the reasons I thought that movie beautifully explained it is that the afterlife or whatever is a tapestry that you paint.
That's right.
So it'll be it's going to be what you make it, what you expect it to be.
That's right. You've got it. So if I'm somebody who is angry, and we all get angry, but the deal about anger is we need to work on whatever the issue is. We need to go through a process of having our anger about whatever it is that's going on, and then we've got to get to a place where we can have sadness about it, and then we bounce back and forth through those two things, and then we've got fear that may jump in there, and then eventually we come to terms with it. But if somebody is full of bitterness and full of hostility and full of anger, it's been really interesting to work with Holocaust survivors.
I wonder.
There are some Holocaust survivors who they were so angry, justifiably, they lost their families, they lost everything. But I went back to Auschwitz with my aunt, and there was a tremendous healing that happened then. Before that, anything about the Holocaust that came on media, she would definitely have a real hard time with.
Yeah.
But when she went to Auschwitz, and when she went in through the gates and turned around and looked at the 15 of us who had come with her, she held up her fingers for victory, that I had survived. I had look at all these relatives of mine. I have survived, and they're here too. Well, that's kind of how life is. We go through these experiences, and we have choices to work on our sadness and work on our fears and work on our disappointments and anger. But there are those people who never, ever work on that stuff. So in working with Holocaust survivors, it was very obvious that those who went back to Auschwitz, that those who told the stories to their children, their offspring, compared to those who were so frightened about even talking about it, that there was a big difference in how the quality of life. And so when we cross over, like I said, we take ourselves to the other side. If we still have work to do, well, we get to work on it in the next life. It's not like we don't have a chance.
Just tell me I don't have to get a job in the afterlife.
Yes. Well, actually, you kind of have to, but that's the choice. That's the choice. It's a choice.
Well, I want to. We have like a minute left here. I want to make sure you get out your information for everybody, website and all that. So I give you the floor here.
Okay. Well, I have a website, carlawillsbrandon.com. It's really easy to find, and it's got all kinds of information there. And I have several Facebook sites. I have Hippie Medium Online, and that's if you want to have a session of some sort in that domain. Then my main Facebook is Carla Wills Brandon, and then I have another one that is Jewish afterlife experiences, and I have lots of information there. Even if you're not Jewish, you'll like all the film and stuff. And then I have Deathbed Visions and the Afterlife on there also. That's a separate page. So there are different resources for folks to go to begin to gather more information and validation about their own experiences. I have 3 books about the afterlife, and one is called One Last Hug Before I Go, the mystery of, I can't even remember the rest of it, but just One Last Hug to Go by Carla Wills Brandon. The second one is Spiritually Transformative Experiences. Was the first part of it. If you just go to Amazon and put my name in,
One
you'll
Last
find
Hug
the book.
Before I Go, The Mysteries and Meaning of Deathbed Visions. It's a long title,
Right.
but it's a good one.
Yeah. It's long. That's their business. I just wanted one last hug. Then the recent one is A Glimpse of Heaven. And so just punch my name into your search, and there will be all sorts of things. I'll have stories and conversations with other people in print online. So, but it was really good talking to you, Jason.
It was an honor to have you on the show. I'd love to have you again because there's so much more on this topic. It needs to be talked about and needs to be heard. And I love your passion for it and dedication to the topic because, like you said, there needs to be more awareness and people need to be able to open up. And that's why I do this show, guys.
Yeah.
And I love the phone calls tonight. My own cousin calling in. That was awesome.
That was great.
Yeah, that's why I do this show. I want to hear these stories. I want to give people the ability to talk about these issues and these experiences that in like validation. That my show is about validating it for everybody else. I'm open about my crazy experiences on this show, just to let people know you're not alone. All right, guys. Next Sunday, no Paranormal Soup. I'm so sorry. It's my wife's birthday, and I want to make sure I spend some good time with her. We get to enjoy ourselves, and I'm not going to worry about trying to do a show that night. I know it's October. How can I not do a show? Well, I'm trying to give you the best guests that I can. 2 weeks ago, we had Terry Lovelace and Heather Wade. It was an awesome show. Tonight, thank you, Carla. You were amazing, and like I said, I want to have you again.
Thank you so much. It was fun. I really appreciate it.
When we come back, 2 weeks from now, we're going to have Terrence Palmer. We're going to talk about the science of spiritual possession. I have the book. I cannot. I've been trying to get through reading it. It's very textbook, but it's very scientific in their approach to the spiritual possession. All right, guys. See you next Sunday. Same bad time, same bad channel. Have a great night.
Thank you for listening to Paranormal Soup right here on Late Night in the Midlands Radio Network. Be sure to catch us here each week, Sunday night, 11 p.m. Eastern Time, 8 p.m. Pacific.